Hello. Let's hop in. Let's hop in. How's everyone doing? Oh, I feel like I'm tall today. So high up. What am I doing? How is everyone? Let me see my hellos. Okay. Hi, Silver Lining Festival Live. Very speedy. Hi, Dem. Hi, Kai. Hi, Toad. Oh, hi, Shacktooth. Welcome. Hi, Shybug. Is this the mid-legendary VTuber Goth Dinya from Val's Gothic Phone Scream? I'm not gothic today, but I'm cozy. I might get a bit emo later. we got books to review, one of which made me cry quite a bit. So maybe. How's everyone doing? Hi Cliff. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good stream. Wait, let me do the thing I'm meant to be. I have kidnapped a co-host for. Oh, I should explain the stream, shouldn't I? Oh, I had the Fuki turned on, and you're suddenly very tall. Okay. As I introduced a bit too quickly, we have a co-host for today's book club, as you may be able to hear. I still barely have my voice, so we have recruited a Kai. So say hello to the couplet. Couplets, plural.
Hello, couplets. Tommy.
Welcome.
Previous Denya torture from a few days ago.
This is true. Though I will say, you may be the most sane of the group, I fear, following that.
I was the least torturous of the torturers.
Oh yeah, really. There was some kindness in that one, and not in some of the other diagrams. It's a false ghost hologram.
Wait, I'm dead. Damn.
Oh, I didn't think that was part of the law, but maybe.
Yeah, force ghosts are only of dead people.
Oh.
It's when you pass on and become one with the force. So.
Oh wait, Cybershrug, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the library. I don't know why. I was under the impression the force ghosts could be just someone that was appearing from far away. Is that not the case?
Well, that's from like the new Star Wars stuff, and it's kind of ish. In the old thing, it was only when you pause on and join the force.
Okay. I choose to. I kind of forgot to watch all the new Star Wars Cinematic Universe stuff, and so unless it was in one of the Lego Star Wars games, or if it was in the first 6 episodes, it hasn't happened to me. Which I think may be the happiest way to consume the content, so I'm gonna just stick with that.
Honestly, probably the best way to consume Star Wars now. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh dear. Star Wars talk? Only a little bit. I'm afraid I'm not very knowledgeable. Although, one day I do want to go back and play Star Wars Battlefront games again. They were fun. They're like the Battlefront ones. Yeah.
I want to play some of them too. I haven't played them in years.
They're one of the games which I hear a lot of positive talk for games for that era. Because you hear a lot of kind of like collab games like that, and you think, oh, it's just gonna be kind of generic title trash, but there's people hosting like servers to keep them alive, and that's not true for all of the Star Wars projects that's been put out. So
yeah, you're not wrong. I used to be addicted to Battlefront 2.
Oh really?
Yeah, it was one of my like all-time favorite games. Is Battlefront 2. I used to no life that game, and then one of the like standalone single-player games from Star Wars as well was it Clone Commander? Yeah, Clone Commander.
Oh, okay.
Or Clone Commando.
The one that I've played the whole way through, I'm afraid I can't remember the full title of it. It was the kind of like single player mission part of one of the Lego Star Wars game where there was a campaign and then there was like an actual like fighting part that everyone else enjoyed. But I like doing the little story bit where you had all these set missions. But,
I still want to play the Lego Star Wars, the like Skywalker Saga one, which is like the combined thing.
Oh, when did that come out? Is that one of the newer ones?
So it's technically a redo of all 3 of the previous Lego Star Wars games. They just made it
Ooh.
one thing, and it's like a big game
Oh,
that
that does
covers
sound good.
all of the. I think it's the first 3 episodes.
Mhm. Okay.
It came out in 2022, so it's pretty new as well.
Oh, okay, yeah. You see, it's very when games come out recently, I'm like, oh, the graphics will be decent, but it'll be built like it's intentionally bloatware. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, it's not wrong.
oh no, I'm still ill. It's so evil. Oh, hey, Supple. They also have something called Force Regeneration. Oh,
Yeah.
is this in the last few films? I think they have a series of things that I'm not sure make much sense at all, but
Yeah, they give one of them force healing, and it's like really weird. It's like, huh.
um, Force Heal is fun. I use Arc Trooper. Does the Jedi have a super speed ability? Wait, can you like noom?
Yep.
Noom. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, the urge to go fast. You probably shouldn't run in a library, but
Yeah, no, that would be a bad idea. I do agree with that.
only if you're carrying books. If you're just trying to like nip back and forth to the desk with a drink because it's a stream time and you don't want to vanish for 10 minutes, I think that's relatively responsible. I haven't tweeted that I'm live. Sorry.
Force regeneration sounds like Marvel's healing factor. Okay, it depends on which healing factor you're talking about, because Marvel has like 400 healing factors.
I do not pretend to know what's going on in Marvel anymore, and I think it's for the best that I've just accepted that I'm a bit confused. But
Are you talking about the MCU or comics? Because I agree with comics.
both. I mean, I used to keep track of a few DC comic series, but there's always so many comics running in parallel, same characters, different universes, especially with someone who is fan of like the Batman sphere. If you look at all the parallel comics for all the different Robins and then Nightwings and then Central Batman, and then you have all of the separate Al Ghul series, like the one following Natalia, that's I gave up a while ago. But
Yeah,
there's still some good
don't start.
ones. I just wait for like 2 years until after they've come out, and then by then there's generally a consensus of which ones are worth reading, and then I pick them up. But
Yeah, I've stopped following a lot of Marvel series that I used to follow. Um, mostly because they like. So one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite comic authors, is Jonathan Hickman.
yeah.
I adore Jonathan Hickman. But they just reset everything he did with the X-Men, and I really liked what they did with the X-Men, and it annoyed the heck out of me. So I stopped reading the X-Men.
Yeah, that's fair enough. The resets can be necessary because things do get incredibly convoluted, especially when you have um you have resets of multiple stories going in parallel by different authors and them trying to manage the same key events but not really managing them. But it is a shame when an arc you've been invested in just kind of goes poof and is never seen again. I don't know. I
Also,
feel
what?
like trying to make different comic series part of the same universe pulls at them a bit. It's fine to just have one-off series. I wish comic book companies did that more, but maybe.
Same. Like Jonathan Hickman's like X-Men would be a perfect example for that, because essentially what he did with the X-Men is you know how the X-Men were always kind of like they just have the little like mansion and they were from there. They were kind of just like superheroes every now and then.
Yeah.
He changed that, and started something called the Krakoan era, where they got like advanced technology, got on their own like little island, they spread throughout space and stuff. They found like resurrection powers and stuff. So they became like this massive force in the whole universe, and became like probably one of the strongest like groups in all Marvel comics.
It's
But
kind of
because
scary.
of that power level, they had to reset them back down so that stuff can happen.
Oh, okay. Oh, also, Shocktooth Ito1, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the library.
Welcome, welcome. Also, hello, Johnny.
Oh, wait, hi, cool. Me and your fish? Wait, what kind of fish do you have? I'm curious. Like goldfish or big fish or a smaller fish? There's lots of fish smaller than goldfish now I think about it.
There are a lot of smaller fish. Aren't sardines smaller than goldfish
Hi,
sometimes?
Jenny. What? Smaller than goldfish, sorry?
Sardines.
I
They can usually get like smaller.
I suppose. I'm gonna be honest, I think I've only ever seen sardines in a tin, so I can't say I have much context. Oh, 1 second. Oh.
Smallest fish in the world.
Mouse is still ill, but that's why I have a handy hologram to help me talk.
What's that mean?
Oh, hi, tacos. Oh wait, is Kaya better volume now? Let me adjust.
Your mom fish. Okay, that's souffle. That's just ow.
Oh.
Ow. I'm gonna cry now.
Okay, let's see. Could you
What do you need?
just talk for a second to see if the volumes are better?
I can keep talking. I don't mind talking. All I'm gonna say is, we're gonna have. I heard one of the books made you cry. And it was not Seven Wonders, which means you really liked Babel, and I
So,
really did not like Babel.
oh, we should probably start the review instead of just talking about Lego Star Wars games. Uh,
Yeah.
okay. Have I missed anything else? Because I've been tabbing back and forth. I still haven't posted that I'm live on Twitter. I'm gonna do that.
Are we gonna do? I forgot which we decided. Are we doing reviews first, or like choosing the book first?
So the plan is we're gonna do spoiler-free reviews. We're gonna choose the books, and then we're gonna do reviews with spoilers. Was what I thought would be the plan.
Bad.
Does that seem
I like that.
sensible?
Heck yeah, that sounds amazing.
Um.
Yeah, Souffle, I'm kind of the same as you, except a little bit more on the other side.
I can't see what's being typed because I'm attempting to improvise a go live tweet, but I'm very excited to see what people hear because I had emotions that weren't positive about the book all the way through, but in the end I liked it. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe how I feel about Babel, because like I adore R.F. Kuang. The Poppy War is one of my favorite books of all time. That whole series is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Brandon Sanderson with the Stormlight Archive. I would say the Stormlight Archive, the last 3 books in the Stormlight Archive, kind of start going down a bit. The second book, Words of Radiance, in my opinion, is one of the best books ever written. Like, straight up. It might be one of the best written fantasy books ever. R.F. Kuang kind of hits the same to me. The Poppy War, in my opinion, is one of the best fantasy series ever done. And I'm kind of chasing that again from her. And I have read Catabasis from her, which I didn't like as much. The Nine Curves River, I didn't like as much. And now Babel kind of disappointed me, and I'm really sad about that.
So I feel similarly in some ways, which is I did not enjoy this as much as the Poppy War, but I think there are a few books I've read in the last few years that I've enjoyed as much as the Poppy War. So that would be a rather cruel standard to hold a book to say wholly whether or not it's good based on that.
Yeah, I kind of agree that like it is kind. I've also read books that are as good as the Poppy War recently. Also,
Oh,
I
okay.
know.
Oh, Oh, lucky reading streak. I finished doing my attempts at being a proper streamer, so I'm going to catch up with chat now. Why are we getting your mummed, but it's our pet fish instead? I'm confused. Okay. I don't know. I like how Denya's avatar is so active all the time. I just can't sit still. I have a peculiarly softly spoken variation of ADHD, and it just manifests in me wobbling back and forth constantly. I also have a spinny chair and 2 monitors with too many tabs open, which helps me with my Newman. Oh, howdy, Nowos. Hi.
I do understand where you're coming from. Like,
oh yeah, sorry, on Babel, because I think this might be helpful. The first two, I can do this by pages, because I kind of saw it happening. The first 250 pages of Babel, I loved the book. And I thought, I'm not saying it was like pleasant to read all the time, because some of it was difficult content in terms of seeing what's happening to the characters and seeing them be kind of so young in their responses and their hope towards it, especially at that point in the book. But at the start of it, I was like, this might be as good as the popular, and I got myself really excited for the book. And then there's around 50 pages or so, and I don't know if for the people who read the book particularly, paper copies can contextualize at what point in the story. I'm not going to say clearly because of spoilers, but there was 50 pages or so when I was like, oh, it's not that I think that this is bad, but there are things happening in ways that I don't think is like a very elegant moving forwards of the things put into place, and there's some things that are getting repeated in such a way that I can't tell if I, as the reader, am not correctly processing the way this is meant to be said to me, or if there are points where R.F. Kuang is capable of beautiful writing and subtlety, but there are some points when I was just like, I feel like I'm being hit over the head with this, but not in a way where it's like an intentional writing technique, but in a way where the point was made and then the author maybe went back and said, no, this needs to be more obvious, and it became very noticeable around this middle point of the book and kind of pulled me out of it for a while. And that got kind of really bad from around page, I'm going to say like 350 to just under page 400. And the penultimate interlude, so this is structural to the book, it doesn't relate to any spoilers, but you have interludes throughout the book from the 4 cohorts in the class who you meet early on, and the penultimate interlude just annoyed me because I was like, I don't know, it didn't feel like it added anything. If anything, it felt like it took context out of the points discussed when they'd previously been looked at in a more elegant way by showing it in context of the other people's experience of those moments rather than just a one-point retelling. And then the last 50 pages, I realised that even if there isn't subtlety on these points, that's because the topics in the book are not subtle. They're not gentle and kind, and you can't always discuss them with soft language. So even though I'm not necessarily a fan from like a reading experience of some of how it's discussed, I don't know if I can sit there and go, the harshness of some of the like literary techniques to demonstrate this and kind of how obvious feels like a cruel way to describe when I know someone's like an infinitely better writer than I am, but some of the ways the points were made felt a bit like kinda the author dragging your feet through the point. And I was like, maybe that's necessary for this book, even if it could feel a little kinda grating. The ending just made me cry hysterically. For the last 50 pages I was entirely back on board and I was crying.
That's fair. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts about what you said, right? Firstly, I scaled it based on a few things. I did a few ratings that I usually do on like a book. Her writing in this, like physical writing that she did, is really good.
Yes.
She really stepped up her writing in this. The Poppy War, that was the worst part of the Poppy War, especially in like book 2. Her writing was pretty rough. In this, it's really
I need
good.
to reread the
Um,
Poppy War. Is that going to be my takeaway from today's book club? Probably.
I'm not gonna lie, I was considering doing it because this made me want to read more R.F. Kuang again, and I don't want to
I
reread that.
I have one of her books left that I haven't read, which is Yellowface.
I also still have to read Yellowface.
Which
Um,
it doesn't interest me as a concept as much as all of her other books, but maybe
yeah,
I think I'll read it at some point. It'll definitely be in a local in a bigger library, so I'll be able to grab a copy at some point to borrow for a while. But
yeah.
it it,
I,
it was nice to
oh, it's
see.
funny.
It felt kind of like she was more in her element in terms of the actual written content, less about the story and
Yeah,
structure, but just the quality of how it's communicated.
yeah. I really like her writing in this. Honestly, I'd give her probably like out of 5, just like a random. I would probably give her like a 4.5, maybe a 5 for the writing in this. It was really well written.
Ooh, yeah,
Um,
I really liked the writing, but I'd like to especially point because I saw a few people talking about how they kept having to pause the book to look up words when reading babel, and I was just sitting there just being like, it would be a poor use of language if in this setting that wasn't the case. These
yeah,
people are
I
intentionally
really
meant to
enjoyed it.
be ostracized from the way everyone communicates, and that becomes like a point for them later in the book. And so the contextual difference of how strange their style of communication is to everyone else is
Yeah,
so
like
like that's meant to be the point. And it was fun.
I
I
love the
I found
change.
some new words. That was exciting. Oh heck, I've got
Same.
sorry, 1 second. I've got notifications. Scene. Oh my gosh. Thank you for subscribing for 6 months. Happy belated Valentine's. Happy Valentine's, everyone. I hope you bought yourself flowers and got discount chocolate today. That's what I did to celebrate Valentine's today. I went out and bought myself really cheap chocolate the day after.
Oh, it's great.
Um, but yeah.
Um, so for writing in this, I
Oh
think
yeah.
she heavily stepped up.
I'm just gonna do the little thank you whilst I'm on mute. But thank you for subscribing. I hope you enjoy whatever book you get out the library this month. I really appreciate it. Well, but yeah,
Yeah.
welcome in, welcome in. Hi West. Didn't you do that? Squeak. Yeah.
Souffle. Yellowface came out in 2023, so it's been a bit since it's been out.
I don't actually know what book she's working on at the moment. I know
I think she
she's.
has
I think she's
all those.
studying in Oxford at the moment, so I don't know if she's writing
Yeah,
at the same time. I think she's working towards a PhD, which is just incredible. But the
she
last
is
50
phenomenal.
pages were very telegraphed. I'm gonna have to talk about this more in the spoiler part of the book review in the third part of book club. The yes, they were, but I got very confused at the start of the last 50 pages. But I'd like
So
to get
okay,
back to that.
so here's the thing, right? I have that under a different category. So writing, like physical writing, like her prose, how she uses writing as a thing, that I think was phenomenal. I think her plot and pacing in this book was pretty substantially bad. I think that's around a 2. This needed to be edited way more. I think the plot and pacing in this was not great, which
So
is why it's so expository. A lot of the book is very expository. Um,
a lot of the book is very expository, but part of me kind of accepted that. I liked how specifically the exposition within the context of the lectures at Babel happened. And that's just because I love a good rant, especially a rant from someone who is intentional with how they speak and is speaking from a perspective which you know contextually is flawed, and so getting to see a character's introduction of an imperfect view of a world, I think is a really interesting way to do exposition, especially with like the repeated structure of it.
yeah, my issue is, right, and this kind of comes back to the themes as well, which you talked about a little bit earlier, where you
Yeah.
said like you don't know if you could have said those themes better. I feel like she already did. she did what she did in this, especially with like the heavy talk about like um just as one example, that's not a spoiler, but like the racism throughout the book, because all of her books deals with racism in some way.
Mhm.
I feel like it was handled substantially worse in this than it was in the Poppy War. Like substantially worse.
I think so. I can understand where you're coming from in that, but I would push back a teeny bit in that I think the improvement in the quality of the direct writing of the book made it a little bit better because it kind of fleshed out some of the casual cruelty of the settings that I think felt quite clumsy in Poppy War because of some of the um because the point that some of Poppy War was at where the subsequent improvements to the writing has happened. Do you know what I mean by that? With like the small incidental things?
Yeah,
Because
I do
the big
agree.
incidents happened and they're noticeable points, but I think especially for like the experience of Rami and Victory at Oxford, a lot of the kind of daily embedded routine of it was a lot of the point, and I think that was only possible because of the improvement in the writing for a less nuanced summary of the point, if that makes sense. Oh, and
Well,
Cyborg, we're jumping around a little bit because we're reading a book for book club this month. We read 2 books, one of which was Babel by R.F. Kuang, and the other was The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World by Bethany Hughes. And we're jumping around a little bit because R.F. Kuang has written several other good books, which myself and Kai have happened to read, so we're using them as a point of context when discussing the author. I should make a
yeah,
pinned message about that, so I'm just going to type that up right now. But yeah, I just wanted to interject to say that.
yeah. So I think I agree with you in some regards. I think the setting specifically, this is a really really cool setting. I really like the setting of like Oxford, but like the kind of messed up Oxford. It feels very what's the word for it? Like um dark academia almost, and I really like that setting. It feels really cool. I
So,
also really like the writing in this book, and
mhm.
I kind of like the characters. The characters can kind of is like a little bit mid in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
Main character Robin Swift and the Professor Laval are really good, like phenomenal characters. I
Mhm.
think the rest of the cast can kind of fall off a bit to a degree.
I think Griffin is also a very well written character, and I think Anthony is as well.
I kind of got very annoyed by Griffin,
I
but I
think
don't
that
know
was.
why. I'll
I feel
read
like,
it again.
how do I phrase this? There's another character in the book, which if is into spoilers territory, who I was very annoyed at. But then after pausing for a second, I was like, I don't like some of the way where this character's points were communicated to the reader, because I think they lacked the nuance that the writer can technically deliver. But I think I'm annoyed at her because I'm annoyed at them because they're meant to be annoying, that I'm meant to be angry with them, not because they weren't written well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that. I kind of want to go through Griffin's character specifically and talk, like, look at that.
I think to do that we need to have the spoiler section, potentially.
Yeah.
I just want to
Um,
mention what Syphil said because I saw a point. I
yeah,
really like the exposition in the lectures. I didn't like the long paragraphs alluding to things that happened off page and how they changed the main character.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Something which I really enjoyed, which I don't know if this is the case for all copies of Babel, but the physical copy I have had little comment notes at the bottom that would discuss on pages if poetry was mentioned or if an industrial point was mentioned, would discuss how it differed slightly in this world because of the implementation of silver within the working, or would discuss more of the context of the often Latin poetry used throughout it, which I thought was just really interesting. I love stuff like that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I did think the framing of the lectures for context was really good. Um,
I did like that part. I think a lot of the rest of the book is still very expository, and I didn't like it. But I do like
yeah,
the way she some exposition.
I is
Um,
I have the bias that I am extremely tolerant of books being mostly exposition, because I just love reading about how worlds work. It's almost.
Well, that's the weird part of
Sorry.
this book. I have to say, I don't know why this was like a historic fantasy book. The magic system was kind of mid in my opinion. It was like really just added on, and it didn't affect the world at all.
Well, it affected the ending.
Well, yeah, but like it like I feel like this book could have just turned in historic fiction, just changed the ending in a bit, and it would honestly probably have hit
So
harder.
I think the reason why it's a fantasy book, because I also had that point when it came to the end, and I was like, I like this book, but it didn't feel like a fantasy in a lot of places. And if I think it was done intentionally to be a fantasy and magic book where the magic was mundane and industrial, because I think the magic and the tool was a literary tool to emphasize the concentration of power as a kind of cultural force. And so I don't think it was about having magic in the way that a lot of fantasy books are in terms of actual adventure, but it was meant to be used to create a literary tool that was an alternative to the political power in play in the system. And so I had very similar feelings, but that was where I ended up settling on the magic. And I don't know if I still agree with that, but that was my thoughts when I got to the end.
Fair. I don't know. I would like to see this book without the magic system.
Hmm,
I
that's
would like to
fair.
see what this book is as just a historic fiction. Because I feel like a lot of the points and a lot of the themes might hit harder if it is closer to our real world. If it's actually closer to like what did happen.
I feel like there was quite a lot of historical grounding still within the book, but maybe that's showing my lack of knowledge of that time period. But it was my understanding that they'd took us quite a few um, real events and had adapted them, and I didn't think that swapping out the economic system caused by the magic for the direct exports, and I feel like if I mention the significant trade points, it's kind of a spoiler, although
Yeah.
maybe, but yeah. Um, hmm. I don't think Robin, let alone his friends, could have made it into Oxford without the magic. Yeah, this was my perspective. The magic was there to give an excuse for people, for want of a more elegant way of describing it, but for people like Robin and Victory and Rami to be in Oxford and to have the chance to make a change, because without the necessity of bringing people to Oxford, there would be no way for them to experience the course of the book and to get to write the story from one of their perspectives in that position of privilege, if that makes sense.
Yes, but my question becomes like, if you have to use a magic system to justify that, is that good plotting and pacing? Or, well, yeah, plotting. Is it good plotting if you have to justify it through that?
I think it can be,
Because
yeah.
then the story kind of suffers for it.
I'd, hmm, I, I don't think this was as fantasy as most of the fantasy books I read, but I don't think that it suffered for it. It was certainly like a soft magic system, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was bad in the sense of fantasy. I didn't think.
Really did not. Like I said, I would love this book as a historic fiction.
Hmm.
I kind of understand why she didn't do it, because she is a historic fantasy writer. It's what she's known for. That's what the Poppy War is. That's what all of her books kind of are.
Yeah.
I get it. It's kind of what her audience expects. Um, and yes, it is an easy way to do the plotting that she wanted to do with this.
Hmm.
I would love to see this as an historic fiction, and see her just like kind of go that way, see what she does with it, because I think it could have been done better.
That's fair. I hate typing everything with this. Oh no, I'm sorry. Hmm. But yeah, something which I was thinking about was I didn't know if it'd be handy to like submit a form for if people had opinions on the book club books where they could write down the
Yeah, that would
opinions in advance and we could read through them. But
be sick.
I didn't know if I felt like that would be asking people to do a lot of work, and then I also thought it'd be an awkward segment if no one wrote any down. So I didn't try it for this month. But oh wait, yeah. Thank you so much for subscribing to the library for 16 months. What the heck? That's a long time. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy whatever book you get at the library this month. Thank you. Thank you.
I like your name. It makes Denya nya,
Like meow.
like the cat she is.
Ah yes. The no mouse here for sure, for sure.
Yeah, no mouse. Cat.
But yes, I feel like I'm gonna suggest we. Ooh, a fun fact.
Fun fact.
Let me think. Let me consult my
Do you
little
have a
notebook
fun
of fun
fact?
fact. I always have fun facts, but it's my
Seeing as we talked about
ears, electrode.
Bye, ears. Seeing
Okay.
as we're talking about babel and it's a very linguistic book, do you have a language fun fact?
Ooh. Oh, yes, I do. 1 second. I'm gonna explain this in a much more clumsy way than how I originally found it, which is, are people familiar with the notion of kangaroo words? Which is a word that contains a smaller synonym inside of it. So an example of this is chicken and hen. Where if you spell out the word chicken, it has in order the letters for hen, and this often happens from a kind of linguistic evolution point. But you also have, they're sometimes called angry kangaroo words, where you have a larger word that contains a word within it that is its opposite. And I went to think of an example and I immediately couldn't think of any. But I just thought that's like a fun little thing, and you can keep a lookout for them. Chocolate and cocoa is another example. Or coca.
Splotch and spot.
What was that one? Sorry, my brain did a.
Splotch, which contains the word spot.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to find the original poster sorry from. Oh yeah, catacomb and tomb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty neat. There's a few words which are rarer that contain like 2 of the words within it. But with being called kangaroo words after kangaroo and roo being a small kangaroo is my understanding of the origin of the term. You can sometimes get words that have 2 roo or like the baby words inside them, and I just think that's neat. I just think it's cute. But yeah. Denya's the mouse, I'm a cat. Nya spreading the truth. We got cancelled Denya before GTA 6! Wait, I thought GTA 6 had been announced. Didn't everyone's like PC specs suddenly change? I've not played any of the GTA games. It's like, it's the part of gaming that makes me feel most inequipped to discuss things. I got no idea what's going on there. But
yeah, I didn't think you would have played it. It doesn't seem like a Denya game.
Yeah. Fun fact, people think the rhythm is the longest word without a vowel in English, but it's actually twinaldillying or twinaldillyings, which just means twins. Oh, that's a much more fun synonym. That has so much more little, like, fun and whimsy. Can I hear it said aloud somewhere? Because I did a poor job of saying it.
Twin dialing.
That does not seem correct.
Google, tell me how you say these words.
Apparently it said twin dialing, but maybe.
That does not seem right. That does not seem right.
That feels like someone pronouncing a Welsh word wrong.
Yeah. Quickly.
Sorry, 1 second. I need to. Oh.
Fine.
Sorry about that.
Twin dialings.
Okay. I'm back. I can still speak mostly, maybe. Here's a fun fact for you. The US aircraft carriers have music bands on them, meaning they're the only ships that can play music at sea. Wait, what do you mean by music bands on them? Do you mean like a military band from within the troops deployed there? For some reason I thought there was a point in Babel that discussed Welsh words. There was! I got excited about it. I was like, oh, Welsh mention! It was mentioned in passing a long time along with Celtic in a conversation that happened in Professor Lovell's dining room with, this isn't a plot point at all, with Robin present when he was talking to some of the other professors, and it was mentioned in passing that Welsh and Celtic were just deemed not helpful within the studies, which is why they'd shifted to look at other languages outside of the traditional languages that were used at Babel.
Yep. So there is some talk
Oh
about.
no, then you called the twin the twin words are hard enough to say as it is with a normal amount of letters and vowels. Oh dear. The dwindling curse. Oh dear. But yeah, there was
really
a brief
funny.
Welsh mention in Babel, and I was very happy to see it because I did wonder if they were going to address it. Oh heck, weird! Oh my gosh, thank you so much for subscribing for 16 months. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy whatever book you get at the library this month. Thank you. That's so long. What the heck? Thank you. I thought it was Robin was going around Oxford and one of the other professors, like a Welsh word was used in a garden to quiet it. Oh, was this with Professor? I don't actually know how to say his name. I've not seen a word similar to it said out loud, but the professor who was Robin's tutor when they were out on the tasks. There was definitely the garden quieting thing, but I thought that was. I didn't think that was a Welsh word. It might have been discussed then as well. Maybe my brain is soupish. But yeah, hi word, welcome in.
Wait, which professor are you talking about?
Would it be Chakravati, is how it's said?
Oh, yeah, I have no clue. I also just skipped that over my head because I have no idea
the
how you
person
would say that
who
name.
lectured in Sanskrit and Chinese, in Sanskrit and Mandarin.
Ah, yeah.
But
I get it.
I'm not gonna claim any confidence on how best to say it. But yeah, Sanskrit mentioned. Yeah, that was that was something which I thought was quite interesting. Which it was. I was slightly. No, we'll go into spoilers there. Okay. Should we swap over to discuss the 7 wonders of the ancient world a little bit?
I am hella down. I like this book a lot.
So I like this book a lot. I realize, does the notion of a spoiler-free review of a non-fiction book make any sense at all?
That's a question that I had too because honestly, does a non-spoiler review of this book exist? They're the wonders of the ancient world.
I suppose we can
I don't know.
discuss like the quality of writing and communication, because there are some criticisms in the style of communication I have, as much as I did enjoy it.
Fair.
So
We can do that, yeah.
more than 60% of languages spoken in India originated from Sanskrit. I didn't realize that. Ooh. I didn't like it, but I can't say I didn't learn anything. Oh, okay. So
But how you didn't like it?
how do I phrase this? I found the 7 Wonders of the Ancient World quite easy reading for how at times dense the content was. I will say there's a few points where I felt it was like the author had decided a theme they wanted for each of the wonders, and sometimes I felt a little bit like they were hitting me over the head with that theme, which is my criticism. Like the notion of romanticism and the love of nature, and there was a bit of
Yeah.
clutching at straws for Babylon, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is understandable. What can you really say about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? I'd kind of hope with the absence of more concrete material to discuss Babylon, I thought the logistics about its location was really interesting, but I'd hoped it would go a little bit more into how it remembered and had stayed such a prevalent story throughout history despite not having any physical ruins for people to associate with. That was something which I was kind of hoping to see, which wasn't there. But yeah. What did you think of in terms of communication style and contents and all that jazz?
Well, so I found this book. Okay, so I have a few criticisms of this book. One, I don't know if it is technically a spoiler, because like it is the 7 wonders of the world, but like
Yeah.
honestly, I'm just gonna say it. It's very Eurocentric. Extremely.
Well,
It's like it's all Alexander the Great in some form
I mean,
has touched on.
wasn't the point of the first chapter to address that culturally the
Yeah, but
notion of the
like
7 wonders is a Eurocentric one, and by looking into the history, these are the only wonders addressed because they were the wonders that were conquered within the Alexandrian Empire, and so it's explaining
yeah,
how in how it formed, if that makes sense. Which it certainly is
I
Eurocentric,
get it.
but I don't know. I thought the introducing them first through the context of these exist as a list of the 7 wonders because they were seen as the 7 pinnacles of an empire of essentially colonialism and expansion. Kind of, it was Eurocentric, but because it was framed as the highlights of a single empire, that didn't grate on me. If they'd have said these are the 7 wonders of the world as natural and the only greatest things, then I would have had the gripe with it. But I don't know, the framing kind of made me forgive that a lot. If that makes sense.
That's what I would actually say. Sifai, I do agree with that. It's less Eurocentric. It was more Mediterranean centric. It was very centric on. I feel like you could have expanded out more than just what it did, because even as just a chronicle for him, it was extremely centric on one section. It was. I don't know. That's a lesser criticism of mine. My biggest criticism is this feels. So it was a very, very informative book, almost to a detriment. I feel like. There's a lot of cool things in this, like how how the book, like a lot of the stuff is described. I wish there was some pictures, because like.
Oh, hi, Esther.
You can
Thank you
describe.
for the follow. Welcome to the library. Sorry.
No, you're perfect. You can describe a coin to me, and I could get a quite good imagination of this coin from how you wrote. Just show me a picture too, please.
The copy I had no pictures in, and I saw Suffle saying that there was pictures in the version that he was reading, and I was so mad. I felt like I'd been scammed. I had to go to 4 big libraries to find a copy of this book, and the one I found did not have pictures. And I was like, they're mentioning all these relics they'd found. I'd love a photo of that relic. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but even in the one that I found that had some pictures in it, it was still not enough. It was like almost like too descriptive of a lot
feel
of
like
places.
sometimes books are so scared of being called picture books, they use 1,000 words instead of a picture. And I understand that
That is what
printing
this
colour
felt like.
photos can significantly change the budgeting practicalities of making a book. And I think that may be more of the reason for not having it in lots of books. But yeah, I'd kind of hoped that I was having the anomalous experience and not having many pictures for along the book, and that other people were finding them along the way. The
No, even in like the one with the pictures, they were pretty sparse. Like
aw,
they were still pretty sparse. Even Souffle just said, yeah, even in my pictures were pretty sparse. Um, I'd love if this book was 300 pages longer, if it added 10%. I agree with that. If it added just like 10, maybe 20% more pictures throughout
Mhm.
the book, and slowed down on some stuff, it would be great because it's so information
something which
dense.
I thought
Um,
would have been nice is, I think, a good way to potentially have slowed down the density of the information, because I did sometimes find myself having to pause and go back and reread things because I felt like I
yeah,
hadn't digested it properly, is I think a little bit of it sounds so dramatic, but a human story of the people who'd found it. Because of how dense the information was, some of the things like the discussions of the lives and the eating habits of the people who were carving out the stones to be moved to form the Great Pyramid towards the start, I thought that bit was so interesting, and I realized it was
yeah.
because it was like a break and talk about more of a human discussion. And so, even if there isn't the historic relics of that, I think maybe discussing some of the context of the people who found the information they were talking about would have been a
That would
nice
have been
way
really cool.
to ground not only the context of how the discoveries happened, which can contextualize some of the language we use around points, but because I think highlighting that a lot of the eras of exploration of these relics, or specifically with the pyramid, a lot of the exploration was done under forced labor and done in like with very little regard for preserving the pyramid. It talks quite extensively of the holes blasted into it and stuff, and so I thought talking more about the people who were doing the exploration would throughout the book would have made it less dense. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree with you.
We
That would
should
have
have
been
stitched
really
Jake.
cool. That would have been really cool because I also feel like I got to points where I was reading a chapter, for example, and I would get to a point where I'm like, okay, next chapter now, and there's still chapter to go because I'm like, okay, I have absorbed so much of what is going on here. I kind of just want to move on for a bit now. Give me
I did
something
feel
else.
that a teeny bit, but not interestingly, not on all of the chapters. I think the ones that dragged for me, dragged feels like such a cruel and slow description, but the ones that felt, how do I say it, um like they maybe could have ended and I wouldn't have not learnt, they could have been shorter,
Yeah.
were Gardens of Babylon, um, which
Yeah.
I think it's hard to do a full chapter of, and then the Temple at Artemis one. There were some really
Okay.
interesting points, but I found it was dense in a way that made it obstructive. I don't know. It
The
felt like
temple
the
of
pacing of that one was quite difficult to digest.
I found the Temple of Artemis. I found that one really interesting because it was like triple the length of like the Colossus at Rhodes. It was
Yeah,
like really long, the Temple
yeah.
of Artemis, but I really liked it. Same with the Mausoleum of
I really like
Halicarnassus.
the mausoleum of. I wasn't going to try and say the name. Halicarnassus?
Yeah,
Halicarnassus.
Halicarnassus. Um, I really love that one. Um, but it was also pretty long.
Yeah.
Um, the ones that stretched
I've
for
just
me for
realised I
too
spelled
long.
wonders wrong in the title.
No, you didn't. Oh,
Didn't
you
I?
spelled it wrong in the title.
Wounders?
Oh, you spelled it wrong in the title. I was looking at your pinned message, but yeah, you did.
No, no, I'm dyslexic. I spell
Wounders.
things wrong in different ways every time. um,
I agree with you, Claire. I really like the Temple of Artemis. The ones that really dragged for me, I agree with you on one of them, is the
okay.
Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Yeah.
Um, that dragged. The other one that didn't interest me as much was the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which also pretty dragged for me a little bit.
That's fair. I can see the
Um,
lighthouse being being a bit slow. Self-care, little Cato. Nah. Every time someone calls me a cat, I have a coughing fit. This is what the world is doing. Also, hi Jake.
I feel like
Welcome in. Welcome in.
part of my problem is I needed more. Message scrolled up. Mythical human or two in each area. I understand that they couldn't do much with Artemis's temple, but there were several eras, but like a builder or a politician on the pyramid. I agree.
Where is this sign? My brain isn't very good at digesting spoken word at the moment.
It's right under Jake's self-care little catter.
Mhm.
For
Yeah.
rodents of death.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. I
Yeah,
will say, as someone who doesn't read much non-fiction, it was easier to read through than I anticipated, if that makes
Same.
sense. Because I kept finding myself wanting to read more, and in the past I've often picked up non-fiction audiobooks, and unless I get into the habit of listening to it when I'm sorting books or cleaning, I just don't end up finishing them. But this one I kind of maintained momentum through quite naturally, which yeah. Oh, hi Neil.
I agree
Welcome
with
in.
you.
Welcome in.
Welcome. I agree with you. If it wasn't through book club, right? A
Mhm.
420-page book, because that's what this was. This was a 420-page book about 7 specific areas.
Yeah.
And one man, kind of, to a degree, with
Yeah.
Alexander the Great, because it is pretty a lot about him. I would not have gotten through this book if it wasn't as well done as it was, because this was actually pretty well done.
I didn't realize how long it was when I suggested it, and then I got a little bit
Yeah.
scared. But
I don't read non-fiction books that long, because usually they're pretty hard to get through. They're like, you need to get that like drive through them, and this one actually kind of did it.
my 700 is less than 300. The copy I had was like 340, but it was it was like a thin page print. I don't know how to describe it. I don't think it was one of the like big print ones, because I was trying to find different versions to see if I could get a picture one. And so in some libraries, if you have the print reference of a book, you can like go up and ask for the number, because I was asking to see if they had any of the picture versions first when I was trying to get this book. It took me like 2 weeks into the book club to get this book. It was so difficult to get hold of, but yeah, I know. Maybe because I love to sail, I felt so much was left out. Yeah, I feel like this certainly isn't a complete description of ancient wonders by any means. I enjoyed the author's work, and I'd like to see them do another series on other wonders as dictated by other cultures or wonders over different periods.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think the quality of their research was really good. I will say one thing which gave me pause is there was a few times when, and this is a gripe I have with a lot of nonfiction, where the author used reference to mathematics and discussed it in a very flimsy way, and
Okay,
I
I'm
was
not
sitting
gonna lie,
there
that went
going,
over my head.
that's not wholly correct. It's kind of an evocation of the truth, but I wouldn't describe that as a representation of things in all earnest and accurate way. And so that kind of made me go, do I trust the contents of this book now, because I don't trust that sentence about this thing I know a lot about. But I kind of just let it go, because I know research on mathematics to be used as like a passing comment or metaphor isn't the same as the clear amount of research that's gone into the other areas.
Yeah, this was a really, really well researched book. Extremely so. I've heard really good things. If you want to read one more by Bethany Hughes, I was thinking of reading Venus and Aphrodite, which was the book she published
Ooh.
right before this. Specifically about like the goddess of love and that stuff.
Mhm.
It's again non-fiction, but going into like the mythology of it and going from that angle from it, it's apparently also really pretty good.
I'm really considering just adding that to the list of non-fiction books for this month.
Yeah, I've heard really good things.
Okay, maybe I do that.
Yeah, Venus and Aphrodite from her is also apparently pretty good. Um,
It's
But
my
I
book
do
club
agree with you.
nomination list. I can add to it now. Um,
I do agree with you though. I would love if she writes more in this style because at the end of the day, yes, it was information dense. It felt like my brain was gonna explode at some points because I just cannot read about the fucking Temple of Artemis anymore. Please move on, lady. Um, but I loved the book. I kind of want to read it again because I'm 90% sure there's stuff I missed.
oh, I've broken the formatting on my voting page, but it's fine. Oh no.
I'm thinking about the Hemlock book because it's about Socrates. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, I've prepared 3 now for book nominations for this month for non-fiction, but I don't read much non-fiction books, so if anyone ever wants to nominate any, I'll be setting up a new form, but there'll be a Google form that's pinned in the book club channel, and that I'll tweet and post and whatever the blue sky word is out with 1 week to go, where people can nominate things if they have a suggestion on what we should read, and then it'll be in the votes next month. There's always going to be books I want to read, and so I'll always add to the nomination list till there's at least 3 in each category, so we still get a bit of a choice on what to look at. But I just wanted to remind everyone that like you can have a say in what we read, if you have a
Yeah.
good idea, because I'm by no means an expert in non-fiction. It's outside of that and poetry. I read very little poetry. It makes me feel awfully uncultured when I admit to it.
Same.
But I actually
I
bought a
also
book of
don't
poetry
read.
recently, but slowly reading it. I'm
I
thinking.
am 100% on your side. I read like no nonfiction. I don't even have a list of nonfiction that I'm interested in because I just don't know anything about that like world.
Well, I have. So, in a technical sense, I read quite a bit of nonfiction, and that I read a lot of academic papers, but they're quite technical, and so I can't put them in the book club. So I can't be like, oh yeah, this fun paper I saw that came out 7 months ago about an optimization of a method for quantum cryptography step that makes it more efficient in explaining in technical detail what processes is required. I can't put that in book club,
Yeah, I
and
don't know
that's
about
the
that
only
one, Daniel.
non-fiction I can do. Or
I
at
don't know
least if
about that
left to
one.
my own accord, that's all I got. So,
I don't know if I'm gonna join you in that one. I'm not gonna lie to you.
but what if I just keep suggesting books about trees? Oh, it's one which I don't think would suit the format of a book club book, but there is actually a non-fiction book that I'm reading over the course of this year, which I've very quickly fallen in love with, which
Yeah.
this is book club. This is the place to be excited and in love with books. It's called
Nice.
Nature's Calendar, the British Year in 72 Seasons, which I can understand if you're not from the UK may not quite have the appeal that it does to someone who deals with its weather every day. But it's by Kiara Chapman, Lula Ellender, Rowan Janes, and Rebecca Warren. And every few days for the year, there is a note of something that happens in nature across the UK. At this time of year. So every few days you check in with the book and you read those few days interlude. And it's not something that happens with like sparing detail. It goes to quite there's some like relatively advanced biology, although it's not done in the most panicky way. They kind of go over the broad strokes of how things happen in quite some detail in terms of all the plants that be. And I just think it's wonderful. I'm really enjoying it. But because it's kind of designed to be read over the course of a year, I haven't considered nominating it for book club because I didn't think it would suit the format. But I do think it is an excellent book. So yeah, a little mention.
That's a really cool book and cool idea. I don't know about the like reading it over a year part, and I don't know about the part that I'm not in the UK. I don't know what goes on in the UK. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Do you want me to see if
Maybe.
there's? Let me see what the latest one is.
You
Because
know what would
I
be
haven't
fun?
actually read the last week's one since I've been under the weather. Oh, there was one that started yesterday. Yesterday, Sparrow's Squabble. Let me go to the page. I won't read the whole thing out loud because they tend to be 5 or 6 pages each, and My voice is struggling as it is, but
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay, we have a little bit of reading. Sparrows have long been a byword for a species so common as to be inconsequential. This goes back at least as far as the Bible. Matthew 10:29-31 famously uses God's concern for sparrows as an example of his omniscience and omnipotence, while emphasizing the special place that humanity occupies in the Christian creation. Are not two sparrows sold a farthing, and one of them shall not on the ground without your Father? But the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, ye are more valued than many sparrows. Yet in the dark, cold, early months of the year, when our senses seem to sharpen by our eagerness for the first slow signs of spring, the sight and sound of male sparrows, becoming territorial, cheeping continually to attract a mate, is a far from insignificant source of joy. Watch closely, and you may see an interloper enter a newly established territory, causing an irate, fluttering flight. It's accompanied by a small, shrill avian um, shouting match, the language of which would certainly not be fit to print. If you are watching squabbling sparrows in your garden at this time of year, look out for the size of the black patch on the male's chest. It's a good indicator of his chances of winning a fight. The more dominant birds develop larger patches, signaling their social standing and age. The external behavioral changes in the sparrow at this time of year reflect an internal psychological shift as the days grow longer, and then it just kind of continues onwards like that. And I just think it's very sweet.
Great.
One of my favourite ones was about moss, and I learned new things about lichen, which I was already a fan of lichen, so that was good. But yes,
That's super cool.
I just
I
like the
love
way
that.
it's written so far. And I'm looking forward to reading the rest of that these few days segment after stream.
Yeah, that sounds sick. I love that.
Yeah. I know I stumbled over my words a bit, but reading out loud is difficult. Lichen? What do you mean, lichen? I like lichen. It's so
Lichen are
cool.
cool.
But yeah, I don't know. I won't go to rant about lichen. There's a non-fiction book, but it's from my childhood, so by no means complex written story. But it was Mind Control by Jane Killick. Ooh, I haven't heard of that one. I think honestly, maybe selfishly, but I'm slightly hoping for a slightly more digestible fantasy book this month. Because the emotional turmoil I felt reading Babel. Ooh.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can. Yeah. I'm hoping for what I've already read so that I don't have to read it because I need a break.
Well, one of the books that are in the slot for this month, you have definitely read, if that helps.
Is it The Way of Kings?
Yes, it's The Way of Kings.
Let's go with me.
Okay, let me slip over. I think we are. Oh, you're even larger on that screen. Okay.
Big. Oh, look at
Big. Ba,
yeah.
ba, ba.
No, the non-fiction books that I read, non-fiction books that I read, I would not suggest here, because I read a lot of stuff about like religion or self-help. That's what I read when I read it.
I cannot read self-help books. I'm just not built like that. I tried to read a few of them. It's just not built for me. I don't think. Maybe I need to read a self-help book before realizing before I could enjoy them. But swapping over
I
to
say self-help.
Oh.
I say self-help. It's more like psychology. I really enjoy reading psychology books.
That's fair. What was I gonna say? Oh, I've just realized we're gonna swap back to the other screen because these are actually not the
Ooh. Y'all didn't see that.
Y'all didn't see that. I haven't messed up anything. No, I haven't messed up everything. Everything was fine. And now I'm on the wrong page.
Y'all
did
did
see it.
see that.
Okay, there you go. So Slow one for sci-fi and fantasy. We have 3 books nominated. I thought Lycan is exclusively moldy rocks. I did not include moss. Well, to say Lycan is moss is kind of a misnomer. It's how do I phrase it? Lichen is actually two organisms that exist in the same space and form a self-contained symbiotic ecosystem, and they just happen to grow on the sides of things. Neither of which is technically a moss, I believe. One of them is fungus, and the others, I think it's called a photobiont.
So usually they're between funguses or like algae and cyanobacterias.
Yeah.
So they're like cyanobacterias, like yeasts or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, lichen isn't ever a single organism. It's always a combination of at least 2, I believe. It's like a little mini symbiotic system.
Yeah.
The Way of Kings. The Way of Kings came in like a really close second last month, and I kind of figured that Kai was either going to nominate Way of Kings or another Brandon Sanderson book, and I just also have Way of Kings on the list of books I want to read this year, so I was like, I may as well put it on there. If there is an Brandon Sanderson book, I'll get told off by Kai, so...
Exactly.
You gotta appease the mods.
I need my Brando Sando in there somewhere. Needs to be in there. Next
Yeah.
time, after we read Way of Kings, it's gonna start being Elantris, and you need to start reading Elantris. Give me.
I still haven't read the third Mistborn book, which I know you're not happy about.
Yeah, but I can't suggest that one. I cannot suggest the Year of Ages
You
because
can't
it's a sequel.
suggest
It
that
makes
one,
me mad.
but I'm also
It makes
very
me
annoyed at the end of the second Mistborn book, so maybe you'll never
I
win
don't
on that
care.
point.
Read through. I don't care. I also didn't like the Ascension, All of Ascension ending that much. Read where Heroes of Ages.
Yeah.
Read it. It's good.
Maybe. Okay, we'll see how quickly I read this month's book club books. Because I have 2 other books to read this month, or at least 2 books I've started. But in slot 1 we have fantasy and sci-fi, and there's 3 nominations this month. They are Mr. Mundy by Garth Nix, which is a series aimed at a younger audience. I think it's at a kind of like, I would say like young teen fantasy series. It's set in...
Feels like. Sorry, it feels like the Percy Jackson series for anybody that wants a like general idea of where it's
similar
going.
age to Percy Jackson series. I would say well written, quite fun. It is part of a longer series, so there are 7 books in total, but each story is self-contained. I will say I think the books build in quality as the series goes on. So I think Mr. Mundy, the first book, is good as a standalone, but I would recommend reading the whole series, honestly. Second, we have The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which I have not read, and I'm gonna put Kai on the spot and make them do the little introduction for this, since...
Kings? Okay, The Way of Kings. Brandon Sanderson's epic. Probably one of the best fantasy epic first books, in my opinion. The second book in the series of the Stormlight Archive is arguably one of the best fantasy books ever written, so if you want to get into that, you should read the Stormlight Archive. Basically, it is the idea of Brandon Sanderson in most of his works. It's a very hard magic system with a lot of rules, really good world building, and phenomenal characters. Yeah. Anything else you would like to know? It's great. It's epic and high fantasy for most people. Pretty good prose. He doesn't write heavy prose. It's also pretty easy to read and pretty easy to understand. He doesn't do very complicated prose for like epic and high fantasy authors usually.
I was gonna say, I think I haven't read this book, but I've read a few Brandon Sanderson books now, and I wouldn't describe him as someone who writes with obstructive prose at all. I don't know if it changes for this series, but he tends to write in a quite accessible way. So one thing which he is slightly guilty of across the series is he names everything in a word that matches the world and can be a bit daunting if you're new to high fantasy worlds and if you
Yeah.
view a map at the front of a book as being scary, but I think a map at the front of a book is a green flag, and so I can't be too sympathetic on explaining it. But no,
Uh,
the structure of his writing is quite accessible, I think, in terms of prose.
Another good thing about the Stormlight arc, well, some people don't like it. I do enjoy it. He's kind of changing the way he's writing the Stormlight archives as the books go on. He is actually becoming more. So he's becoming more and more open to introducing people into fantasy. So he has a philosophy in how he writes, especially high and epic fantasy like this. He writes it like he is telling you what is happening in that world. He isn't writing it from a prose perspective in world. So he'll use words that we understand to get the point across of what he is trying to say. So he isn't one. It's not like Patrick Rothfuss, who, in the name of the winds, writes heavy, complicated prose. Brandon Sanders is almost the exact opposite. He writes very low to the ground, very easy to get into and understand writing, and I really enjoy it.
Also, good
The
magic
Stormlight,
systems historically. Don't know too much about this
yes,
one. But
it's phenomenal. This might be my favorite of his magic systems, in my opinion.
ooh,
It's really well done. It's really
interesting.
cool.
This book,
It is
it's
really cool.
okay. It's not on the bookshelf in this room. It's on the bookshelf in the room over. I'm tempted to just go and pick it up after this, even if it doesn't win. But and then the third nomination we have is Neuromancer by William Gibson, which I've got a little description for the submission of this, so I'm just gonna read it out. I
Yeah.
haven't read this one myself, but widely
I have.
considered to be the start of the cyberpunk genre. Ooh, the
Yes.
book follows one man's struggle to reobtain his ability to access the internet, whilst dealing with the cohorts given similar deals to perform an out-of-this-world heist. Oh, that has a lot of keywords that I enjoy the sound of. Okay. Ooh. Okay.
Yes, if right. That would be a great way to describe how Brandon Sanderson writes. It's very accessible writing.
Yeah.
He has a very accessible writing style.
I think how do I phrase this? When writing in fantasy and sci-fi, or generally in alien structures, you kind of have to choose to either have a really good hook for the story, have really good quality of the concepts that you're communicating, or have really simple concepts, and you need one of those three. And Brandon Sanderson chooses to communicate things in quite a plain way and have more complicated structure in terms of the world itself, and maybe not as much of a direct hook at the start of the books, I would say, potentially, but maybe that's just the ones I've read.
Yeah, so what I would say is Brandon Sanderson actually, so if you have it in a triangle, right, in that regard, where it's like you either have really easy to read writing or heavy prose, you have a very good hook, or you have a very interesting world. Usually he sacrifices a very plot hook and complicated writing for a really well done world, which is Mistborn. Mistborn is an extremely interesting world with not that heavy of a plot hook. It's just like a heist story.
Yeah.
The Way of Kings, I think, actually sacrifices prose for both the others. The hook is really cool and interesting, and the world is really cool and interesting.
That's kind of reassuring, because the other Brandon book I read, which was Dress of the Animal Sea, I felt veered too far away from not having a hook to motivate me to keep reading it.
Yeah. I can tell you why that is. Dress of the Emerald Sea. All three of the secret projects.
Welcome. How are you doing? Sorry.
Welcome, Kiyoki. No. All three of the secret projects were his exploration into genres he doesn't write.
Yeah.
So, in all of his normal fantasy books, you see what he writes normally.
Yeah.
In the others, there were explorations of genres he doesn't write. Like Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is his exploration into romance. It is the most romance of any book he writes. So it doesn't feel like any of his other works. Tress in the Emerald Sea was also his exploration into a different genre, as well as The Sunlit Man. First, quick disclaimer. Anybody that wants to read Brandon Sanderson, don't read The Sunlit Man. It spoils part of the rest of the Stormlight archives. So skip The Sunlit Man.
Wait, that's
I would
ominous.
suggest
I
you
didn't
read
know
intro.
that. Okay. Oh.
We only really recently found out about it because The Sunlit Man is in the fifth book that just came out, and we realized that it actually spoils part of the fifth book.
Oh,
If
I'd
you
be
read The
so mad
Sunlit
at
Man
him. I'd
first.
step on his toes. Oh, I wouldn't be happy
So
with that. Sorry.
it's weird. So I can't tell you how it's spoiled. It's not like a
Oh,
full
thank you for the
spoiler.
hydrate button search, Kiki.
I cannot describe it. But yeah, so do not read Sunlit Man. That's the one I
At
would
least
skip.
before
If you
it's. Is that the.
don't read it before book 4. Don't.
Okay.
You can read it after book 4. Don't read it before book 4.
Mhm.
Of Stormlight, which is the weirdest thing because he put it out. Like I don't get why he did it like this. I think the Sunlit. I get it. I don't get it. But yeah.
Okay. Should
But
we.
do read the Way of Kings. Read Way of Kings, everyone, and then read Elantris.
No bullying, chat into who to vote for. Okay.
Oh, that's. I wasn't bullying anybody. I was just telling them they should read it.
I'm not having additional votes because. Oh dear.
Why? Because then we would read the Way of Kings.
Yes.
Because
I
I have
think
300.
giving the people the chance to choose is good. Because otherwise I'll make you read books about Lycan. And
Yeah, and I'll get us to read every
yeah.
Brandon Sanderson book for the next 3 months.
Oh dear. Okay. No, variety is good. I've got you quite interested in the idea of reading a Skullduggery Pleasant book for book club at some point.
That's
I think was one.
you've gotten me curious about a lot of books. I want to read Mr. Monday by Garth Nix. I'm gonna
I think
vote for Brandon Sanderson, but
Mr. Monday is you can. How do I phrase it? If you are someone who reads quite avidly, you can read Mr. Monday in a few hours. It's not a very long book. I'm not sure how long Neuromancer is, but I've seen Way of Kings as a physical book, and it's a similar size to Babel. So
no, it's bigger than Babel.
wait, let me go look at the print version I have.
Babel was like I believe like 580 pages. The Way of Kings is 1007 pages.
Oh, these are. I was talking about thin print pages before. These are the pages of like an academic paper thin. This book is maybe 1 centimeter. Let me get back to my desk. This book is maybe 1 centimeter bigger than the copy of Babel I have, and it is twice as many pages, just under. So.
The Way of Kings is long. Do you want to know the fun part about the Way of Kings? It's not the longest Stormlight book.
Oh gosh.
They get longer.
I am really excited to read the Stormlight series someday. If it doesn't get nominated this month, I might start it towards the end of them. If it doesn't get picked, I might just read it in the background. Honestly, I want to read all of these books. This is what happens every book club. But okay.
I want to read Mr. and the Way of Kings because I want to reread the Way of Kings because then you can read it. Then you can like
Paul
I can
is up
make you
now if
read
you'd
Words
like
of
to
Radiance
vote.
in your free time. Because then I can make you read Words of Radiance in your free time because I cannot get it for a book club, and I can talk about Words of Radiance because it's one of the best fantasy books ever written.
Is this you wanting book club to come back just so you can try and force me to read books so you have someone to talk about the world building with? Is this the elaborate plan?
Yes, because I need to talk about Words of Radiance. It's really good. But so the Way of Kings is
voting time. Sorry.
The Way of Kings is 1100. Words of Radiance is 1080. I'm pretty sure. Oathbringer is 1.2k words, and the Rhythm with War is the same. And then Wind and Truth, the 5th book in the series, is 1.4k words.
The copy of The Way of Kings I have is 1,108 pages. This is going to be
Oh yeah, so that's
heavy.
closer to paperback.
It's a paperback.
Yeah, it's closer to the paperback.
Bible thin pages, yeah.
It's
Though
it's
I
dead.
will say, healthy spine on the book for a second-hand book. You know when long books kind of curve inwards at the ends, as if it
Yeah.
because of the certain types of book bindings causes the ends to contract, so it doesn't sit flat on my shelf. It sits kind of as if it was molding itself around a sphere. but yeah.
But yeah, words-wise, we're word-wise, the Way of King is around like 400-ish. The longest one, Wind and Truth, is around 520k words.
Wait, isn't this book over 1,000 pages? Did you mean 1,500 pages?
No, it's like one. So I think it depends on like the printings,
Mhm.
but the paperback is usually about 1.3k for that one.
Yeah.
We don't have a paperback Wind and Truth yet, which is the longest book, but Rhythm of War, which is the longest we have now, is 1.4k in paperback
There is a
pages.
point where it becomes physically difficult for books to be printed at that length. Because I know
Yes.
if you're reading, I was reading a new copy of Babel. I actually got it as a Christmas gift, and I was so nervous for the spine of that book because it wasn't bound. And I think I have opinions on different types of book bindings and how good they are for preserving books. Which is a strange thing to have heated opinions about, but probably not surprising for me to have them. But
Well,
there was several points where the book would just open at the same point over and over again because the number of pages wasn't suiting to the binding method used for the spine on it, which made me a little bit sad.
very fair. No, I agree. I didn't read Wind and Truth in a physical form. I read it as like a PDF because like 1.4k hardcover pages becomes physically hard to read.
Yeah.
It becomes like it's like 500,000 words. It's like really hard to read physically. So I read it as a PDF because I was not gonna get yeah.
No, that's
I
very
think
fair.
the last one I read as a physical book was Oathbringer, which is the third book. I read Rhythm of the War as a
Okay.
PDF. It just became too hard to actually read the site.
Yes, I was mad about the glossing over of the Library of Alexandria. Yeah, I was. I was excited for it. I was waiting for it to come up, but no. I feel like I haven't voted in the poll because I feel like I shouldn't. I don't know. I'm the host. I can't be voting for.
So historical fiction.
Would that go on the next offer? Uh, when.
It's a good question.
What does that mean? My brain's smooth. Does that mean would that go in slot 1 or slot 2, or does that go?
Yeah, it would be. Is it slot 1 or slot 2?
Uh, if it is fiction in the sense of telling a true to life story of a time, but not intended as like a textbook and more so as a book about life at the time, I guess it would go in slot 2. If it's like made up characters, made up events, made up setting, then it would go in slot 1, I think. I know that's not a particularly hard and fast guideline, but that's the best I can come up with. Neuromancer one. Ooh. I guess we are doing the I do love a good heist. I'm kind of excited for that. I'm gonna read all of these books this month. That's what's gonna happen. I should have seen this coming.
Read The Way of Kings, and then read Words of Radiance too.
Oh my
Okay, I won't do
goodness.
that to you. I won't do that to you. I'm
Not
not
in
gonna
1
ask you
month.
to read. I'm not gonna ask you to read like what would that be? It would be like close to 3k words just of Stormlight Archive.
I mean, I read that much a month, but not of one series. I have the awful habit of reading 4 or 5 books at a time. So, but yeah, we have Neuromancer as the book for slot 1. Very exciting.
I have one thing. If you're reading Word of Radiance, you're not allowed to read a different book with it.
I mean, that's logistically difficult when I have book club.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Because this isn't the only book
No.
club I'm a part of.
We can read like Mr. Monday. We could do that in a week, and then the rest of the 3 weeks is Words of Radiance.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. We'll see. I'll try and read as close as I can into one sitting.
Because the Words of Radiance. Oh, it's such a good book. I need to reread it.
Okay. Next slot. We have non-fiction
get
to
me away from the
distract
storyline.
Vander Sanderson.
Get me away
Okay.
from the storyline.
The slot 2,
Oh.
non-fiction and informative. We actually have 4 books for this slot with this month, which are A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived by Adam Rutherford, Venus and Aphrodite, History of a Goddess by Bethany Hughes, which was recently added, and The Light Eaters by Zoe Slinger, and Sapiens by, I don't know how best to say the name, but I'm going to try my best, Yuval Noah Harari. I fear I haven't done a very good job on the first name. But
It's
yeah.
actually pretty good.
Oh, look at me go. But I'll go through each of them briefly. These are all kind of non-fiction informative books. A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived by Adam Rutherford is a discussion of the history of humanity through gene, in the sense of like a gene pool, and discussing the different trends and patterns in that through history, and the traits they exemplify. Is my brief understanding of it. Venus and Aphrodite is a book by Bethany Hughes, who was the author for last month's book non-fiction book club book, describing, I believe, the mythology and how they was adapted and preserved of the name goddesses. And then Light Eaters. Oh, sorry.
So, Venus and Aphrodite specifically it's about the goddess of love of Venus and Aphrodite, but it's also about like the biography of like desire from like Mesopotamian era, how it travels through. It covers all of it. So it goes from like specifically like Botticelli to Beyonce. It tells about how that archetype almost of the goddess of love, or the history of that goddess, influences a lot of history through like art, mythology, revelations in human desire, like stories throughout that. It's
Okay.
a lot about like all of that throughout. It also covers some of feminism and like a bunch of how this all influenced each other and where it all, like the commercialization of romance. It's about a lot of that stuff.
Ooh. I love going back and looking at a historical topic and just going, and now it's something you buy in a shop, and being a big grumpy about it.
Exactly, that's what this is about. It's about like that whole idea of like the commercialization of it and being like, why? Why is this commercialized like this? Where did this come from? Like, and getting that annoyance of like this like whole thing of like the goddess and like this whole ideal that got watered down almost to
become
like
commercialized.
Yeah, it does work a lot on a lot of that stuff and like where it came from, and
Would Dr.
it's really
Zhivago
cool.
go on this list? Yeah, more so than the other point, yeah. These
Yeah.
aren't the categories for these. I realise the fantasy and sci-fi and non-fiction do not cover all books in the world. And I didn't pretend that they do. I just thought that it would be nice categories to have. I feel like 3 books might be too much to get people to read, and it would also be less difficult for me to think of 9 different books to have every month as nominations for, across 3 categories. And I
Yeah.
want to read at least one fantasy book. I like yapping about fantasy. We have to do at least one of them. But yeah, so if there's any books that aren't essentially sci-fi or fantasy, put them in slot 2, and we can just put an asterisk next to them. Is my informal ruling. Maybe that'll change with time, but I read Dr. Zhivago a while ago.
I've also read Dr. Zhivago.
And I found it difficult to read in the kind of technical sense.
Yeah,
But I'm glad
same.
I read it when I read it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I was at exact same place.
But yeah, it's one every now and then I see, like a, it's not called book talk, is it booktube video on with heated comments, and I'm always scared of the comments. But yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't actually seen the movie, which I feel like is probably a much more sensible place to start. But
Now that you
no,
mention it, I don't think I've seen the movie either.
I've loved the book
Maybe
and want to
maybe we
discuss the
should have
terms and the characters. Ooh, that would be fun.
that would be fun. Maybe we do like a movie night for the movie, and then we can discuss it from that.
Yeah, if we ever read, I suppose it's more likely in slot one, a book that has a film, I'm very happy to do at the end of the book club stream, we have a movie night in Discord, just as like a general
Yeah.
point. I realise that everyone's gonna now just suggest The Hobbit next month, so we can all watch either The Hobbit or The Lord
I
of the
don't want to read
Rings.
The Hobbit. I don't want to read The Hobbit.
Well, you can't get us to watch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, so
Okay, that's also true.
I mean, you probably could, but no. It's basically the same. How long is the full Lord of the Rings trilogy? I can't remember.
The full, like, if you want to do, well, that depends. Do you want to do like the extended versions?
What do you? I've only. Wait. I think I've only ever read the extended versions. I don't. Which bits do the extended versions contain that are otherwise cut out? I'm scandalized all of a sudden.
Well, I can't tell you because they're just longer. But like, I don't know exactly the scenes that get extended.
That's fair. The movie's really long. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the normal running time for the
Oh, hi,
three,
Best. Oh, yeah.
the normal 3 is 9 hours and 3 minutes. The extended version pushes that to 11 hours and 37 minutes.
Oh, do you mean the films?
Yeah.
I thought you meant extended versions of the books, and I was like, who's reading a
Oh
shortened
God, no.
versions of The Lord
I
of the
am.
Rings? Do you see
No,
why I was
that
scandalized
is
now?
a crime.
I,
That is a crime.
I was like, who printed that? I'm gonna have words.
That's a crime. I will resurrect. I will take on the spirit of J.R.R. Tolkien and smite thee if you do that. That is a crime.
Oh gosh. I've been working on some sprite conversions of the project and stuff to look more like the real thing. Oh my gosh, that's so cool! It's been so cool seeing all the updates of what Rust's been working on with the Doom stuff. It's very cool. I love when people have like hobbies and projects they work on over time. Hobbies are so cool. It makes me so happy. I'm a silly little mouse, and we should start the poll to decide the books for this month before we just
We haven't
start
covered
talking
two
about
of the
fantasy
books.
again. We haven't.
The Light Eaters,
Oh, the Light
which
Eaters.
I have read.
Have you?
Yes, you suggested it for
I
one of the
did.
book clubs, and I was really interested in it, and I just read it.
I haven't actually read it yet. How did you find it? Did you do the
It was
introduction
really
first?
good.
See?
It was really good.
Everyone should
It
read
was
more
not a book
books
I
about
thought.
plants.
It was not a book I thought I would like, and I really did like it.
I really enjoy the author. Is it Zoe Schlanger?
Yeah,
And
Zoe
I've
Schlank.
read 2 of her other books, and I think her style of communicating is very good for nonfiction.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I really, really enjoyed this book.
Okay. But yeah,
I actually read both of the last ones.
it's about plants. It's about how cool they are.
Yeah.
And it talks about the intelligence and their processes. And I think it's neat. I think plants are so cool. Yeah.
It challenges,
And then
it challenges a lot of our ideas on like consciousness, intelligence, the like agency that plants have in the like natural world. It's a lot about like the hidden world that exists in plant life, and it's
Yeah.
phenomenal. It is really good.
And then the last book, I think is probably the most famous on this list, is
Yeah.
Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which is a book discussing the origins of Homo sapiens and humans, and discussing kind of our evolution from the start of all of the other different types of sapiens that were around on Earth at the time. Which I've actually read a small amount of this before. Pardon me. I had the thing where I'd gone on holiday and I hadn't brought enough books, and somebody had left it where we were staying, so I just read the first 2 chapters of it. And there was so much which I didn't know in there, and so I've always meant
Yeah.
to come back and read more of it. I think it's one of the, how do I phrase it? It's one of the most popular non-fiction books that isn't regarding self-development. I think is fair to say in terms of commercial things.
Yeah. I've read
The background
Sapiens, A
music
Brief
is playing
History of.
multiple times.
Oh no.
Confusing. Okay. Oh, I know what that's from. Oh, that's awkward. Can I swap
So,
that here? We're not gonna have background music for a second whilst I try and figure out how to do this. Could you talk about Sapiens for a second whilst I'm being technical, Mouse?
yeah. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind is phenomenal.
Oh, Hexable!
Uh,
Thank you so much for subscribing for 7 months, Suzanne.
thanks,
Get
love.
lost
Thanks, love.
ads. Welcome. Thank you
It's
so much. I
really,
hope you enjoy
really
whatever
good.
book you get at the library this month. Um, apologies for the ads.
So I wasn't indeed
Twitch v
going crazy.
Twitch.
No,
No, I'm
you
sorry
weren't
about that,
going.
Johnny. That was the audio that's picking up Kai. That was also picking up the background music that I can hear, and it's looping
What?
on that. And I'm just trying to figure out how to separate it. But I'll.
That is interesting.
Uh,
Oh,
OBS is always set up incorrectly.
gosh,
No one's doing it right. It
I hate
doesn't matter
OBS.
how technical they are. Their
I
OBS is
hate
bad.
OBS.
It's you can't have a good OBS. It'll uninstall itself. Anyway, back to Sapiens. Kai.
So, Sapiens covers a bunch of the history of human development, including stuff like the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution in our how currency and coinage developed, religion. It covers a little bit about the creation of religion, the impact of religion in our development as a society, the arrival of imperialism, and then eventually capitalism, the history of inequality, injustices, slavery, stuff like that. Um, it is very, well, it's relatively unbiased in like the view of just
Pardon
as
me. Sorry.
events. No worries. And it's more focused on like what we know from that instead of having opinions about it.
Something which I
It
noticed
is,
in the first chapter, which I don't know if this is true for the whole book, but it's very good at saying, and we don't know what happens here, rather than just kind of
yeah.
conjecturing over points. It which sounds like a strange thing to praise a book for, but it does irk me when a book is well researched and tries to merge over the points which there isn't solid information from, because it can lead to false assumptions. And so that's something I really enjoyed about the part that I'd read. But yeah.
Yes, he does continue that throughout the book, where he does try and dissolve theory away from it in places where theory cannot be removed, right?
Mhm.
And where there is often conflicting theories, he presents all the main conflicting theories. He presents all of them and doesn't have an agenda on like which is right. The book is written from a very, if I could say it, his agenda is
Mhm.
to present the most accurate view that you can have of how it looked without like involving his own opinion into it. Um, It is a really, really well done and written.
Okay.
It's fantastic. I really
Ooh.
enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, that's a good recommendation.
Also, it's very easy to read for people that are looking for something that's not
Yeah.
too hard to read. It is really easy to read. Um, unlike Seven Wonders, which is like a little bit of like a very information dense book, this is written to be easier to read than like stuffing you with information.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think the pacing of it is quite good, but again, I'd only read the very start, so I wasn't sure. Once again, I am struggling against Twitch's character limit in polls, and so we are having crunchily abbreviated versions of titles, but the poll is going live now for the non-fiction book for this month. If you would like to vote, please vote. Ooh, democracy, it's good.
Oh, you can't fit in a brief history of everyone who has ever lived.
I can't
Yeah,
even.
that would make sense.
I can't even fit in everyone. It feels kind of cool to not include the author when discussing the book in the voting phase, but I think it's more directly communicative for people to vote for the title than the author.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. Okay, so I've read The Light Eaters and Sapiens,
mhm.
but I
So,
also kind of want to vote for The Light Eaters because you need to read The Light Eaters because it's fantastic.
so if you would like to reread them, you can. If you want a lazy month where you just read another book, then you can vote for one you've already read and just have read it
I already,
early.
I already have a lazy month because I've read Neuromancer like 3 times.
Oh, have you? Ooh.
I got really, really, really into cyberpunk, and I read a lot of the influential works in cyberpunk, and
Man, I
it's
hate this on
one
Venus
of
and then maybe Light Eaters? Ooh. I mean, you can always nominate one of the books next month if it doesn't get picked. Um. Ba ba ba.
okay. Hear me out, team. We stack the votes that Denya has to choose. I vote for the Light Eaters, and then it's 1-1-1,
But then,
and then we make Denya choose.
what about democracy? Am I allowed to vote? Are we doing the nomination cooldown rule? I'm gonna likely say that a book can be nominated 2 months in a row, and then after that it must have at least 2 months before it gets submitted again. I think is a good way to have it, because I think the idea if someone sees a book and goes, "Oh, I'd really like to read that," and get to discuss it, and then brings it forth next time. Because you often hear, well, we've talked a lot today about how, oh, I want to read all of these books. I'm into Venus and Aphrodite. She's an interesting goddess. Oh, let's go, let's go. I'm always just
I
excited to
voted
hear
to.
people be excited about books.
That's the one I voted to, is Venus and Aphrodite, because I really want to read it. Um, wait, that means I can't nominate The Way of Kings next month.
No, I'm
I'm crying.
sorry. You can
I'm
nominate one of the
crying.
other 500 Brandon Sanderson books, though.
I'm crying.
Do you not want me to read any of the other Brandon Sanderson books? Is that the last series and then I
Yes, I want
stop?
you to read The Hero of Ages as well. You should read The Hero of Ages, and you should read Words of Radiance. Those
I need to
really-
I need to be grumpy with you off stream because I'm so mad at the end of book 2 of the Mistborn series. I don't think I actually
did
finished it. I think I have 30 pages left. I'm angry at Brandon Sanderson.
Finish it.
No,
Finish it.
no, I'm.
Finish it.
I think yeah, I will do. I think I did actually finish it. I'm very not happy with that, man. We have a and there's a match with the Supreme Court will step in. So we send the book
Oh, yeah,
club
Denya's the
nominations to
Supreme
the
Court.
Supreme Court. Okay.
Denya is the Supreme Court.
In France, they have a runoff vote, I
I'm
suppose.
confused.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I'm confused. You say there's a lot. You didn't. Wait, which part of book 2 did you like? The last part.
Okay, there were two key events that I didn't like. One of which was before the last big event as a kind of geopolitical event in the book, which you know what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
Don't know if you'll know what it is, but it just felt very antithetical to the narrative of why the characters existed in the first book and how they were perceived socially and how they internalized that. It felt like you didn't done all of the social philosophy that was put in place in the first book, and contextually
Okay.
it just felt like a complete betrayal of that and made me question if any of wasn't happy with that at all. And then I don't know how to say the other thing I was unhappy about without being spoilers, because it's very difficult to be vague about it. But I felt like it made
Yeah.
the possibility for reliable narration in the remaining part of the book very difficult.
Okay, but that feels close to the end of the book. But if I think I know what you're talking about, I thought the end of the book was phenomenal. The last 150 pages is fantastic.
Oh no. We'll talk about this off Steam. This isn't on the book club books. After the stream ends, it's just me and Kai arguing about Brandon Sanderson for an hour.
It's me getting you to read Hero of Ages.
We'll see. I think I already finished it. There was 10 pages left. I didn't know if it was a chapter or an interlude chapter at the end. And I was just I feel no motivation to continue this series. This is a good rest point for the book, and I feel betrayed by it. And I don't have faith in it for it to narratively continue from here. The poll has ended. There's a tie!
Let's go. Dania chooses.
Venus and Aphrodite and the Light Eaters are the two that are tied. Should I do a runoff vote or should I be a dictator? What do we think?
I think if you do a runoff vote, it's just gonna get the same votes.
Yeah, one person voted for Sapien, so I suppose could swap their vote, but
Or I bribe them to not vote at all, and then you have to choose.
I'm more inclined to read the Light Eaters because it's about plants. And it's my nomination,
really
and I'm selfish.
It's
but yeah,
really good.
if it goes down to my deal breaker, as the deal breaker, as the spare vote, I'm gonna vote for The Light Eaters by Zoe Slunger to be the non-fiction book for the month. So we have our two books. We have Neuromancer by William Gibson, and we have The Light Eaters by Zoe Slunger. It only took us 2 months to make you all read about plants. Nepotism!
Got there. Nepotism wins.
This is all an elaborate ploy for a grandchild or something that I have that wrote a book to try and force people to buy it. This is the true plot behind everything. The stream, the library. Oh. I'm just imagining, the clip of, is it Eugen from Le Seraphim going, nepotism, whenever someone says it. That's all I can think of. I didn't say it in a sassy enough way as how she said it, but I just don't think I have the capacity for that. But yeah, there's a lot of book club books for this month, which I think is very exciting. I'm so excited to talk about plants next month. I can't wait. Yeah. Oh, so I should write that down, shouldn't I?
That would be a good idea.
Oh, also something which I was going to ask, in terms of being clear and communicative, is describing the books we're reading now easier to understand as February or March's books? Which
February.
February's books? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
because the
that.
meeting was in February,
Yeah.
and we read them through February.
You'll answer by and okay, I'm just typing that out as a pinned message.
I'm flabbergasted at you not finish. Oh well, you did finish the Oliver Solution, but you didn't read the third one.
Okay, I will tell you at what point I stopped wanting to finish the book because it happened in 2 parts, but they are both spoilers. No, actually, I'm gonna type
Oh
it to
yeah,
you
it's a
so
sequel.
you can just mold, what's the word? Mold? Is that the
But
word?
yeah, I don't know if I would mull. I'm just like, huh. Mad and balding. I'm not balding.
Molding and balding. Oh my gosh.
Okay, yeah, I get that part.
Okay, so now that Kai's processing that message, it's time to do the spoiler part review. So it's kind of difficult to do a non-spoiler and spoiler review of a non-fiction book, but we are going to be discussing spoilers of Babel. So if you haven't read Babel and you would like to at any point, which I would suggest reading this book. It is time to vanish away. Did, I'm gonna just put spoilers in big capital letters in the stream title in the hopes that that saves everyone. But yes, spoilers time. Are you processing what I said about Brandon Sanderson? Oh, how are you doing, Kai?
We're gonna talk about this.
Okay, yeah. So outside of me insulting one of Kai's favorite book series' endings, spoiler reviews of Babel. So I alluded it to it at the start, but to me, the narrative high point of the book was the death of Professor Lovell. What do you think about that, or do you need another few moments to recover from? Okay, a few moments.
That was a very. I would agree. That is like the high point in like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that was that arc of the book. Although maybe didn't have as much momentum as the second part of the book because there was some pacing issues throughout the book. To me, even if it wasn't the most smoothly paced and engaging part of the book, was as a whole the best part, I think. The segment of the trip back to England following that and leading up to going underground and joining Hermes in full, that was the segment of the book which just really lost me. And I don't know if I can pinpoint why, but I did feel quite disengaged through that part of the book. And then at the end, where they decided that having lost everything, they were going to make a run at Babel and take over the tower themselves, I kind of felt engaged with the book again, which I will say, I was so confused when they said, yeah, we're gonna do a siege and we're gonna take the tower and we're just gonna sit in it. I was so confused because I was like, surely you broke into the tower to destroy the silver by using the world for translate. Like, what? Why else would you do that? You think the country that is going to invade someone because they don't have a good economic system is going to listen to a strike? I was so confused. And then I realized that it was just kind of them building towards that. And so once I stopped sitting there being confused, just being like, this was so clearly laid out as like foreshadowing for the entire book. This has to be how this ends. I can't have misread this. And once I just read it as kind of an exploration of how specifically Victory and Robin were kind of handling that conclusion and that I was happy with it again. But yeah, I thought it was quite. But yeah,
I
I'm just gonna read out what Suffle said because there's a few points. I was surprised by Lovell's death. I wasn't expecting it, at least not at that point. So I was expecting Lovell's death to happen in the book. In a sense, it happened earlier. I'd kind of realized it was probably needed to happen narratively at some point, but I wasn't anticipating it happening this quickly. I was also just under the impression, because it was something that I was like thinking about, this is going to happen at some point, probably whilst they're in Canton or on the way back. I was thinking that going into the Canton trip. I was expecting it to either be Rami or the brother, the not Robin but Griffin, the murdered Professor Lovell, and so I was very surprised that it was Robin, which I don't know if that was a shared experience at that point. It felt kind of, I don't know. It was a little bit surprising, but I think it was surprising in a way that was written to be consistent for the rest of the book, and so I wasn't unhappy that I was surprised by it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so talking about like in spoiler based on, because I have a lot of thoughts about
Yeah,
like
we're very
every
in spoilers at this point. I've just listed out like, but yeah.
Firstly, characters.
Mhm,
I feel like there's two very well done characters.
mhm.
One that has the benefit of maybe being very well done, that kind of falters a bit. Laval, Robin, really intricate, really good, well done characters. Griffin has a lot of complexity. Like I said, I probably need to reread the book a bit to get more into Griffin's character, focus on Griffin's character. Pretty well done. A lot of the other characters kind of break in a lot of places. I think specifically Letty is a very
So
disappointing character in a
I
lot of ways.
I alluded to Letty quite a bit during the like spoiler free segment because I really didn't know how to discuss her character. um, to me, how do I phrase it? I was very confused by Letty because she was never portrayed positively throughout the book. I think it's fair to
No.
say. And at times it felt kind of, it's strange because these weren't like small faults she had, but it did feel almost cruel at time in the how obviously they were demonstrated repeatedly over and over again. And how the moment where it struck me a little bit was when they had the conversation. I think I can't remember what it was following, but it was at the end of a chapter, and they remarked that it always ended up being Victory comforting Letty, even though if something had happened to Victory, I think. I can't remember the detail of it,
Yeah.
but that
I remember.
highlight just felt like so on the nose in the fact that they were introducing Letty as this kind of can't see the forest for her life in front of her character.
Yeah.
And I don't think I think it's good for the book to have a character that is as humanized and as integrated to the group as Letty is, and still have her be flawed, and still have her have this character trait. But I just felt at times it could have been done in a subtler manner. If that was the part of the book that did feel a bit like it was hitting me over the head with the she's not good, she can love them, but she doesn't understand. And part of me took a moment to pause and go, do I dislike this because it's like uncomfortable for me to read, and I maybe don't understand the nuances of the other perspective? But I do think from like a literary perspective, it didn't have enough faith in the audience when it came to portraying Letty and us noticing, if that makes sense. But maybe that was a reading and not a general reading.
So the thing with Letty, and Souffle, I get where you're coming from with saying that Babel was very personal to her and her character. She was Babel and Hermione, and Anyone Sings for Babel was a direct attack on Letty's character. The problem with that is, so there's two thought processes throughout the book.
I will say I was expecting Letty to betray them in some way. I wasn't expecting it to be such an active betrayal. I was expecting it to be a passive betrayal. But yeah.
So here's the thing, right? I get what they're doing with Letty's character. There's a very good Martin Luther King joke, MLK quote, right? About the enemy of reform is not the unapologetic racist. It is the squishy moderate. It is the moderate in the center that can be moved.
Mm-hmm.
Letty, she is a good word for it. Kind of what she is positioned as in the story is she is a performative ally. She is an ally that, when pushed, will falter on that and instead go back to what's comfortable for her.
Yeah.
What I don't like about that is I get that. I understand what she's going for in Letty's character. Having Letty be the ultimate like twist villain, the like pretext of that, betrays that idea of what Letty is, because like it like kind of breaks that whole idea. It also breaks the much more interesting idea of if you made... So a lot of the subtext in the book is how the motive is the Empire using people and products from the colonies to continually oppress the colonies.
Mm-hmm.
If you made the final villain, I don't say one of these two would have been the best, you would have had to rework a lot of them. If somebody like Rami or Victory was the Letty character that betrayed them in that last moment as the final twist villain, it would have hit so much harder on that. I feel like Letty's character breaks two motives in the story that I do not like. Because yes, Babel was a direct attack on her own character. It was extremely ingrained in her own mind. But the book kind of tells you to go against that. And her following that the whole time breaks that whole theme in the book. It keeps her as a performative ally. It keeps her as almost... It plays into the idea of like all people of that will stay as that. The best way to put it is all white people in the Empire will always be white people of the Empire. They will always be evil of the Empire. Which this book kind of tells you to not believe with Letty's character for most of the book, and then it just goes, no, that is what's true. And it doesn't work, in my opinion.
You see, I think, how do I phrase it? I think there's some inconsistency with Letty at the end. I think they wanted someone to be able to go in and have the conversation at the siege at the end. And they chose Letty because she was the easiest character to be accepted in to have that conversation. And I think her giving that speech just felt so bizarre. And I also think I also had gripes with the notion that Robin just couldn't rebut any of it, because it's one thing to say, oh, that's a gripe I had throughout this book actually. Whenever Robin would just go, oh, I can't argue with what Professor Lovell or with what Letty is saying, that was so ridiculous to me. You are studying language to the highest degree. It's one thing to say, I can't dispute with Professor Lovell because he is his father and he makes him feel so trivial and childish, and he knows that even though he's rebelling against him, he cannot disagree with him and disappoint him in such an active and obvious way by not sharing his ideals. That's something which you could have argued, but that subtext isn't present when he's discussing things with Letty, and all the characters just go, oh, we can't rebut this, not in the sense of like we're exhausted and we've tried to explain it to her and she doesn't get it, and the labor of trying to have our friend understand us and her not making any progress is heartbreaking because it highlights how different we are and how she won't ever understand what we go through. That's like one very fair response, but it's just like, oh no, she trapped us in a logical fallacy, we can't disagree with her. And that happened multiple times in the book, and I just couldn't understand why on earth the conversations were framed in that way. Because I understand with Lovell, but with Letty, especially for Rami's character to not continue disagreeing, just felt so strange to me. But I don't know.
Yeah. So you say Robin is too young to rebuke anything, but no, it's not. And the passive like acceptance of like I can't do it is I don't like. Because yes, all of these characters, Letty, Lovell, all of them, you absolutely could. A lot of them are honestly not.
They
There's not
weren't even well spoken
like
arguments. I was just sitting there with my
it's
little
not.
debate hat, just being like, this could be torn
It was
apart in seconds. I don't
violent
understand.
though.
Like it's very it's a very difficult thing that they're so clearly arguing in the wrong on so many values. So them pulling together a shallow point about economics doesn't really matter much here because that's not the principle that's being discussed. They're just moving the goal point of what the passing value of why it's good is. But that's me getting too into the weeds of it. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think Robin
no,
not
I
being
agree.
able to discuss with Professor Lovell specifically is good for his character. And I think the it shows, how do I phrase this? There's a lot of discussion within the book, as it's not really subtext, it's plainly addressed at several points, how Professor Lovell will have these conversations with the other professors and will debate them on equal ground and go back and forth, and they'll disagree and they'll huff, but they'll talk to each other and they'll respond to each other's points. And he never does that with Robin, no matter what Robin says. And I think that's like an interesting thing to be true, even when Robin does try and argue back and discuss that.
So, Souffle, I'll push back one thing on that. Yes, Marx would only come in 20 years from like when this is set, and then Das Kapital would only be another 20 years, so 40 years out. I will say that is a little bit appealing to authority in regards. You could still go at it from like other points because a lot of them have really bad points, and a lot of the arguments are extremely flimsy.
Yeah, I don't think you need to have a piece of generational literature to disagree with Professor Lovell. And it would be the case that simply highlighting that they're not discussing the point originally raised and that they've moved the point and they've not discussed the actual value issue raised just wasn't addressed. It was just accepted that they'd moved the topic of conversation and then trying to debate them on their terms. Um, pardon me, which
Yeah,
again I think correct and natural for Lovell's characters discussions with Robin, but it just felt so strange with Letty.
it's and even with Lovell, you could, but Letty specifically, you could destroy a lot of the points she makes. Because she doesn't do very well constructed arguments. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I don't know. That was something that felt strange to me, and part of me, I paused and was like, "Is this an intentional point about how these are highly educated linguists? They have incredible control of language. They are being taught it in such a specific way, where they can only learn languages to use them for babble, never to discuss and directly articulate what they think and how they feel." But I was like, no, that can't be true because of the translation in terms of the literary translation part of the institute. That has to some extent be part of their studies, so it can't be a reflection on how Babel is only training them for the things that they can directly extract value from. And so I just kind of got a bit about it, but I'd
Yeah.
really hoped that we were going to get to see Griffin and Lovell argue at some point. Just because I wanted
Yeah.
someone to tell him how wrong he was. I think that I would have just enjoyed that emotionally.
Honestly, that would have made me like Griffin more. I'm not gonna lie.
I think it was more likely that Griffin would have just shot him and then shouted at his body. But it would.
Probably.
But I would have
But
liked
that would
that
have
to
also
see that
made me
scene
like
too.
Griffin more.
Yeah.
One thing I have to say about characters specifically, and it's more in the like general.
Mhm.
I don't know how I feel about a lot of these characters.
So Rami was
Like
my
as
favourite character. With the other favourite character being the cook slash maid who largely raised
well,
Robin on, because
one
this
of
this is
the
something which I was gonna go on a tangent about, which is partway through the book I was like, this feels very pessimistic, and I can't ask a book about colonialism to be optimistic, especially in the time it's set in. But it felt very hopeless in a lot of ways and failing to have specifically Letty understand them at every point. And then I just thought about, I've forgotten her name, but the Scottish cook who lives on Lovell's estate.
oh yeah.
And I just thought about her for a second and I was like, she has never spoken to Robin with anything but kindness. I think the only thing vaguely political she said is she said something in favour of the suffragettes at one point and got laughed at by one of Lovell's guests and had to
Yeah.
leave. And I was just like, she's a character that was like pushed aside, but was so kind to Robin and didn't show any of the like prejudice or blindness. And admittedly, she wasn't introduced in a setting where any of those were directly addressed. But I was just like, oh, that's like a sweet thing to have in the book where it's otherwise been so difficult, if that makes sense, to have
Yeah.
a character who is just, I don't know. Oh wait, Waluigi!
No, I get what you mean.
Miss Baker? Miss Piper, that's the one. Thank you, Sybil.
My issue with characters is less about like I don't know, it's weird. The characters in a lot of the characters in this book are mouthpieces for specific ideologies.
Yeah.
From straight up. A lot of them. Even like arguably some really important kind of main characters aren't characters. There's no like character behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Letty kind of falls into that a little bit.
Letty, yeah. I think Letty's the most obvious example, but you kind of have Rami and Victoria of demonstrating two varyingly hostile ways for people dealing with like the visible racism of colonial England. And at times it was strange because I felt extremely protective of Victory just as a character. Like I just wanted to like step on anyone's toes who like went within 10 feet of her, who wasn't one of the little cohort. But there were other times when I was just like, I don't know if she's actually that fleshed out outside of being someone that events happen to. And that felt like such a cool thing when she had so much that she could have been and discussed, if that makes sense. So I wondered if other people also found that, because it felt like maybe this was like an intentional reflection on their different ways of responding to it, but it felt like Rami was a fully fleshed out character, far more in comparison to Victory, and because the absence of understanding of the white kind of pro-colonial characters of the story that Letty embodies, she was therefore very fleshed out as a character through being so representative of that and having that point kind of like hit home at many points across the story. But yeah, I didn't know if anyone else kind of just felt the victory didn't have much to her character, as cool as it feels to say.
I did. No, I do agree. Honestly, I think a lot of characters didn't have a lot to their characters. They kind of, they're. It feels bad to say it, but they're less people, more allegories. A lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of characters that are heavy allegories instead of like being characters or like. And a lot of what she does employ through a lot of them is very on the nose, almost didactic, like explanations of like stuff like this. Like it feels very on the nose how a lot of these characters are used in the story. Um, I will agree that some of the like actual group is pretty okayly developed. Rami, as a good
Yeah.
example, is pretty well developed. I will also agree that Victory is not very well developed as a character.
I was kind of surprised at the end of the book when she started having action and decisions, because I was genuinely surprised, and I was like, oh, I'm glad that we get to see Victory dealing with this and we get to see her responses. And then I kept being surprised by what her character said, and I realized that was just because she hadn't expressed much so far, and maybe, I don't know, I feel like there could have been more done to set up how she acted later on that would have made her feel more fleshed out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Characters in this was interesting. I will say, on a positive note, for like spoiler or kind of positive, kind of spoiler. So
Pardon me.
there's a book that was before this that kind of set the setting and the whole idea of like the dark academia vibe that this book is going for. That was provided by a book before this, or
Oh.
called The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Was
Oh
one of the
yeah.
first dark academia genre specific books. That suffered in the academia part. It was a horribly unrealistic depiction of academia. This book nails academia. It does a phenomenal work at the academic like aspects in like Oxford and dealing with life in academia and stuff like that. It
Yeah.
does a really good job at that.
Vouch.
I love it.
Yeah. I think the depiction of the workload and also how the workload and the culture regarding it was used to isolate and separate out the student cohort was good structurally for the story, is something that would make sense to exist in that world, and also well done. So yeah, I agree on that. The relationship between Letty and Rami did make it strange. I have an emoji face. Yes, the relationship with Letty and Rami was very interesting, but to me, how do I phrase this? I never really considered if Rami ever liked Letty and just refused because of he knew that although he was accepted in Babel as a translator, he would not be accepted. Was it an English rose that's used to describe Letty throughout the book? That to to touch her and to be romantically involved with her would be a line too far. That he has a part to play that he does so mockingly, and that if he were to step in that direction, that would be too much, and the hostility would return. And so I never really considered whether or not he was like conflicted about that, and he did like Letty. I was so sad that I felt, how do I phrase this? Robin, maybe this is me, but Robin was clearly in love with Rami to me throughout the entire book. And maybe that's an insane take, but that's what it read as to me. And so when there was the kind of point of the love triangle for his brother with when his brother died fighting Sterling Jones on after the Great Escape, and the description of how that looped back to, I've forgotten her name. Was it Elise? No. Do you know who I mean? The girl who Professor Lovell wouldn't let anyone touch her desk.
Oh, fuck, I forgot her name.
But yeah, I'd kind of hoped there was going to be some like
Her.
reference of it there, and so I was like sad when that. I don't know. I I I I just thought it was really sweet. I would just I need to go read like 10 found family fan fictions where it's just them happily studying together, sharing cakes in a library at 2 a.m. is my takeaway. Nothing like that I think would particularly beneficial for the structure of the book. Just that I want for my soul personally. I just want them to get to be happy and to argue about languages.
Was it Evie? I think it was Evie.
Evie, yeah, that was it.
Nah, Evie.
Is it pronounced Victory? I think so. I think it's pronounced Victory. How do I phrase this? When you have certain regions that have names that are after like English words, which is what I took this naming to be with her being originally from Haiti, to me it made sense to be pronounced like Victory, because that's generally tends to be the case for those like group of names. But I wasn't sure if that was the case. There may be a French name Victory, but I don't speak French. I know very little. I got hints too, but I thought it might be the Old English writing techniques where you read it now, men loving one another. Yeah, potentially. I think how do I phrase it? The bit that kind of made me think, oh, this isn't just me reading into it, was when Robin was internally addressing Letty and Rami as Letty having unrequited feelings, because he internally discussed that either just by reflecting on Rami's situation and how that would impact him, and how Letty could not know whilst feeling so completely in love with him, how she couldn't understand. And then also there was a few times where he referred to himself and Letty in like the plural in regards to those feelings. That is where I picked it from, but that might just be me clutching at straws. So I don't know. But yeah, I realise that it may sound negative, but I really enjoyed this book. Did cry at the end. Sometimes you need to cry for books, but the ending, I was a little bit surprised by some of it. It made me a little annoyed at Robin, the ending. Does that sound strange to say?
No.
Because it felt like when the siege started, that was his plan all along, and that he had made that plan out of his inability to continue past what he'd lost. Because, and there was something that was addressed earlier with the return to Canton, which is that in some sense sorry, Victory could refer to France, Rami could return, and they all had somewhere to go back to, but Robin didn't have a home to go to. There wasn't Lovell, there wasn't Oxford, and so if this fell apart, he had nowhere to run to. And so it made me angry at him when I thought the plan was going to be he destroyed Babel. When the others stayed to destroy the tower, it almost felt like a betrayal to those people, because they made the decision, but it didn't feel like they made the same decision with the fair amount of information that Robin did going into it. And it made me sad. But yeah.
No, I agree with you. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I thought the talking, how do I phrase it? When the siege started, I referred to this earlier in the spoiler-free section. At first, I was kind of like, "What's the point of this? This won't work. Surely it can't work. It would feel like it would undermine the rest of the book if this worked." I felt, and then when it seemed instead to be used to demonstrate the involvement of silverworking throughout the UK and to justify Babel's influence more so than anything else. That's what it seemed like to me narratively. I kind of accepted it as that. One thing which I thought was quite interesting was the strikers and their depiction throughout the series, which I don't know if anyone wants to yap about.
What did you find interesting about them?
So I think when they first just took Professor Lovell at his word and was like, "Oh yeah, the strikers must be bad and they mustn't be hardworking and they must just not be accepting to learn a new trade," I was like,
Yeah.
I was expecting Letty to have that perspective and the others to get it. And I was kind of like, what are you doing when none of them didn't take Lovell at his word? When they all took Lovell at his word, rather. And it felt like the change of opinions on that was rather sudden. Because even when they were discussing how to utilize the political parties to prevent the war, it seemed like none of them had considered and reflected on the people, the outside of the direct invasions and trade partners of colonialism the current system was affecting, if that makes sense. I expressed that in a very clumsy way. And so I was a little bit irked just at the characters. I was holding them by the collars going use your brain. What do you mean? What do you mean Professor Lovell is wrong about your countrymen, as what Robin would often refer to, but the farmers and the mill people he's probably right about. That just seemed so strange for them to not push back against. But
Yeah.
um
I didn't have strong feelings about that, but describing it like that, I do agree. That
yeah.
is an interesting view that I didn't read into as much.
I also thought it was interesting because when maybe, and I don't know if this was unfair of me to lean into, but it felt like the book itself was written in a slightly negative way of the strikers, because it was mentioned multiple times throughout the siege when the strikers were helping them. It wasn't, how do I phrase it? It was because something that appeared that was also against what they were against. And it was mentioned several times how the strikers could get behind there not being silver mills anymore, not caring about Chinamen as the phase of the invasion, and caring about the consequences of the people so far away in Canton. And it felt a little bit cruel towards them, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing about modernization is that it hits people strangely. When spreadsheets invented, accountants were made obsolete. It made more accountants. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on the tax season. I'm having to still file my taxes. I'm so grumpy. But yeah, yeah,
It is taxi. Oh.
filing personal taxes is such a new. Well, tax season's over in the UK. I'm having to pay a fee to file late, but yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah, They didn't reply to my letters for like 6 weeks, and then I was on holiday when the period to
Alright.
file taxes ended. So it was after the date to submit when I got back and received the letter that would allow me to file. And I just haven't got around to it now. But I have 2 months, but yeah, do taxes if you're not in the UK. If you're in the UK, check that your taxes have been sorted. They're probably fine unless you have to file for personal income outside of a job that is filed and paid, and the personal income source that exceeds £1,000, in which case you'll need to file and request a UTRN. There is a £100 late fee for filing after the end of January, but yeah, that's the set fee for the next 2 months, but it takes a while to do, especially because everyone who's doing it late is doing it at the moment, so the process will be even more delayed, so look into it. So many streamers I know doing fraud. I have the downside of, like, for the year that's being filed for, I tutored on top of working quite a bit, and so I have to file taxes because I had like multiple jobs over the period it was for, and so it's just the paperwork for it is so mean. But anyway, not one of the parts of the British system that was criticised but should be complained about taxes in Babel, but no, taxes are good. They're so complicated. Anyway,
One thing I love about
do
the
your
book is very
taxes.
quotable.
Everyone should pay their taxes, especially Warren Buffett. But that's not going to happen. So, so
The book is very quotable. I write down a few quotes that I love.
I loved the ending
from
note
the
for
book.
Victory because the sentence she said in Creole when Robin's brother asked her what she meant, and she said she'd tell him about it later, as if she would explain the translation to him another time, but that was a literal translation of the phrase because I looked it up. That made me smile and giggle. But yeah.
There's a bunch of quotes that I really love. The one about like that is what translation is. That is what I got the quote here. Wait, let me find the quote. The whole quote here written down in my Notion where I do all of my life is now. Because you got me addicted to Notion. That's just what translation is, I think. That's all speaking is. Listening to the other and trying to see past our own biases to get a glimpse of what they're trying to say. Showing yourself to the world and hoping someone else understands.
Yeah.
I love a lot of the quotes in this book. It is really well written.
I don't have the quote in front of me, but that one was one of my favourites alongside at the very start, where it was discussing the friendship, and it's a little paragraph, and the final line was that it was listing small things about themselves, and it was talking about how I'm gonna get my copy of Babel. Let me. I'm running. I almost walked into a box of books, but I'm running again. I should really turn a light on. That would make this easier, but alas. Okay. So I'm gonna have to speedily find the page. I can remember where it is structurally, but yeah, I enjoyed a lot of the quotes for the book. The actual quality of the writing in terms of written communication, I thought was very good. I think there were some points that maybe could have been like mentioned less in terms of the edit, but the actual words as written, very good, very positive. My favourite of the R.F. Kuang books I've read so far, I think.
Like, from a writing perspective, yes. I think Poppy War is a better book as a whole.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But like writing wise, heck yes. Poppy War is not all that well written. Like physical writing, it's not all that well written. But I think it's a better book.
Oh yeah, one of my favourite characters was Anthony. because I
Yeah.
think he was a very good counterpart to Griffin, because he
Yeah.
was used to introduce Babel at the start and be so visibly in love with her, and still had given up on Babel. I thought that was good narratively.
I could see that.
Professor Chakravarti, I thought was an interesting and good character. Oh hi, Bus, how you doing? Glasses time. I thought it was interesting that he left. I don't know if it was ever directly addressed, if he was another one of the Babel students that, well, he wasn't a student, he was a professor, but if he was, actually no, it was addressed at the end, because it was highlighted that Kraft was the only white person that remained in the tower at the end in the siege, so he must have been someone who was brought to Babel from where he'd naturally lived and grown up to help with the work. I thought
Yeah.
he was quite interesting. I think he saw where Robin was going, and that there was no point of escalation that Robin would stop at. And so,
Yeah.
although Robin, as kind of the narrator of that point, the book internally reflected that out of him just not having enough resolve to see it through. It was more so that he saw the I don't know how to phrase it. Robin wasn't looking to win a debate, he was looking to get in a fight. If that makes sense.
To a degree, yes. I feel
But
like Griffin more pulled on that, where Griffin's whole ideal was like the British Empire will only ever be changed or brought down by violence.
yeah,
Um,
but Robin, I think ended up saying that point more than Griffin in the end, because he accepted that near wholly
yeah,
after I think it'll been after Playfair at the ball when they had to go to the old library.
yeah.
I'm trying to find that quote I was excited to talk about from earlier. But I'm just flicking through trying to find the page I didn't mark. I believe it's from some Arab country. I know he speaks Sanskrit and Cantonese. Yeah, it was my understanding that his main language was Sanskrit, and he was trying to learn Cantonese to make up for Professor Lovell being the only speaker. But I got the impression that it wasn't his main language. I wasn't sure. Chocolatey saw Robin as someone who had never had a vision for how it works out. Yeah, I think that's kind of that was kind of how I read it too. That he saw Robin as not wanting to live in the world how it was, rather than change the world to some extent at that point. I think I always just like consequences of actions in books, but I think it would have been nice, even if it was non-character based, non-direct story, but to describe in like cold separation some of the more things that broke across the empire as Babel went down, rather than ending with Victory's feelings as she was running and with the tower falling. But I can understand why it ended at that point narratively.
Also, just for you, Sufa, I don't think Chakravarti is from an Arab country. I think he's Indian. He's from an Indian country because his big whole guiding philosophy that he talks to Robin about, um, when Robin's increasingly violent actions, he goes, it's against his own personal of Amisa, which is a very big thing in Indian religions. Specifically, like the ones that most people would know it from is Hinduism.
That would make sense for my
Um,
knowledge of where Sanskrit influences linguistically, because that's
yeah,
the root parent. I think
yeah,
it
yeah.
was
He seems
mentioned
to come
earlier.
from like an Indian and more like native Indian area.
I guess I just can't find this quote at all, which I'm still looking about a little bit.
Rami is Rami is Arab. Rami is from an Arab country.
Okay, I'll have to find it for later. I'll
He's from
post it in the book
India.
club channel.
Yeah, Rami is from Rami is from India, but he has influences from a lot more of the Arabian Arab area, and brings that through. But yeah, Chakravarti is like talks a lot about like stuff from Indian, like Amisa and stuff like that.
Yeah,
From
I liked
Indian
him
religions.
as a character. I think I wouldn't say he was like fully fleshed out, but I didn't think he was meant to be from his point in the story. He was meant to be there as a kind of consistent side character. I was honestly a little bit surprised when they introduced the characters in the Lone Chapel and he wasn't there. I was kind of hoping to see him, but I guess it makes sense later on that not all of the people involved in Hermes were visibly entangled with it. But yeah.
A lot of the characters are, specifically a lot of the professors, are more supposed to be like consistent side characters, the way you describe them there.
Mm-hmm.
Playfair is a good example of that. Professor Kraft is also a great example of that.
Yeah.
Even though Kraft is a bit more involved than Playfair or Chakrabarti, Kraft is still supposed to be a more like
Secondary
Kraft is
character,
supposed to,
kind of.
yeah, she's supposed to challenge Letty in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
To contrast characters like Letty.
I think it would
Yeah,
have been.
she's.
How do I
Sorry, yeah.
phrase it? It was. It would have been interesting to hear Kraft talk in a way of why she made her decision to stay, not just in a. Because when she was talking about ideas, she was largely comforting the others. Because to me, she was kind of like the calm adult in the room at the siege. But I thought it would have been interesting to hear her perspective on why she stayed and why she stayed to the end.
She kind of says something. Well, she kind of has an idea of something throughout a lot of her writing, but it's an idea. It would have been cooler if they expanded on it.
I may have just missed it out because I didn't pay too much attention to her when she appeared as a lecturer. I'm going to be honest. I didn't like cement her as much as Chakravarti or Lovell, but
a lot of the characters are like confronted about like the truth about like what the British Empire is doing and like the complicity in injustice and like that stuff. Kraft is the only one that is genuinely grappling with it and like compelled to talk about that complicity and like to talk about and like struggle with that. And that is probably a very, very big reason for her still being there. Is like that idea of the grappling with the injustice that she was complicit in.
yeah.
Again,
that point
it's
was
not
well
outright
illustrated,
said.
I thought, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not outright said that is why. It's just you see, and that point is very well illustrated that that is what she is
I
going
want to
through.
double check.
But it's
I didn't
probably
misremember. Kraft was the classics lecturer who spoke at them in monotone, wasn't she?
yes, she's the
Yeah.
one that when Letty goes for support, she is very cold to Letty and is just like, no, there's no discrimination against women. Just be talented and work hard. That's Kraft. She's the like cold, very monotone character.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, that statement, by the way. No, there's no discrimination against women. You just need to be talented and work hard. In 1830s, sure, buddy, sure.
Yeah, if you ignore the fact you have to walk through the rest of the world to get to Babel, there's no discrimination here at all. The Institute
No.
itself's perfectly fine, with no issues whatsoever, and you don't have to walk through the outside work at all. But yeah, I think that's all there was of her. I didn't think she appeared anywhere else. But yeah, I didn't.
Yes. Yeah.
I enjoyed the book a lot. It was quite different to what I normally read because I will say, how do I phrase this? I tend not to often read in books that without the like guise of it being like elves and dwarfs kind of thing address like these harsh topics in the language of how they actually happen in our world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was a bit strange for me to read compared to normally reading a slightly distanced version of it. But I enjoyed the book. I think I would recommend it to people. I tend not to believe in like numbers out of 10 ratings, but it was good. I would say it is in the top 3 books I've read so far this year, I think.
How many books have you read this year?
11, I think. Yeah, 11.
Damn. I would not say it's in the top 3 that I've read this year.
How many books have you read this year?
I've actually read less than you. I think I've read 8.
Oh, okay. I will say, you give me a book in an academia setting, you get some bonus points. You give me a fantasy book, you get some bonus points. You give me visible research, you get bonus points. So this book was like hitting on a lot of points which I am biased to enjoy.
I thought you would enjoy a bunch of like. I also enjoy a bunch of this book. I'm really interested in linguistics.
Mm,
Sadly, like I talked about when we talked about like how I felt about this book, a few of my favorite points of like fantasy and historical fantasy, I feel like this book does really not do well. Specifically
okay.
in world building and magic system. I feel like as a historic fantasy book, I wish it did more. But like that's
I wish it went more steampunk with when it touched on how Professor Lovell had made his money on making steam more powerful. I wish they were in like steampunk London.
right.
But I think part of the kind of power of the book is that it's so directly analogous to the world as it's remembered and the world as it was.
Yeah.
And so abstracting it too much would have removed the concepts which they were addressing from our
Yeah.
world more than the author wanted to happen.
Yeah, that's why I almost I get why it's I get why it's historical fantasy. I feel like it would have worked better as a historical fiction in a lot of ways, but I also get why it's a fantasy book with a magic system, but it doesn't lean into the fantasy system enough for me to actually like really enjoy the fantasy of it.
That's fine.
But I do enjoy a lot of the like linguistics and like a lot of that stuff about this book. I do really like it.
I
Because
will
R.F. Kuang is
say,
really good at it.
at one point, I did just kind of sit and cry about forgetting my first language when reading the book.
That is fair.
Which it feels strange to say because I don't have I spoke Welsh as my first language for those who haven't heard me yap about it, and I can probably pronounce it if reading it off a paper better than the average English person, but I've got no ability for it left. I learned it for several years and then just never practiced it, and went to try and reply one day and couldn't respond in like I could understand barely, but yeah, and so that was something which I didn't realize I was emotional about until I read the book. But yeah, that one made me sad. Something which I saw at the end, which it's not really much of a point of discussion, but I wish we'd seen the letter from Griffin to Robin in full. Um,
That would have been really cool.
I kind of wish that the last interlude was from Griffin instead of being from Victory at the end, which maybe that's mean of me to say, but
Yeah.
I felt like he
Well,
had more things to say at the end of the book, even though I did enjoy that chapter. One thing which I thought was
nice from the section which had said, scored before the signatures like an afterthought, we are not the only ones. To me, Victory read that as, there's others out there. Hermes continues. I took that as them having other brothers and sisters, because there's no way, given the survival rates of the 1800s, the Professor Lovell is just like, I will have only 2 children in Canton, and they will maintain the empire. There must be dozens of them. Like, I don't,
Probably.
I like do not question this at all in my mind. Yeah.
No,
Which
I do
I
agree.
feel like
There's
that'll never get continued, because what knowledge does Victory have to continue that forwards with Griffin Lost? But yeah,
there's no way she
I'm
can
at 6,
actually
not
continue.
bad. It's been 2 months. It's been a month and a half. 6 is very good. I'm a problem at
This is
11.
really good.
Um,
I'm only like 3 behind you.
yeah. To be fair, I know some people don't count audiobooks. So some of those are audiobooks. But
Yeah, I've not
yeah,
had time for audiobooks.
I listen to audiobooks whilst I'm doing like simple coding a lot of the time, because
That's smart.
I have to do select statement left join onto the snapshots table a lot, and I don't need all my brain cells to do that. So I will re-listen to audiobooks of some of my favorite like teenage fantasy books as I do so, and it will make me happy.
I want to start doing. So I've started every Saturday.
Mhm.
So this morning I did it. I go on 5K runs.
Ooh.
That's a lot of time. It's like at least an hour-ish if I do it like for a while. If I do warm up and everything. So I might start listening to audiobooks again Saturday mornings when I go on a 5K.
I can't listen to audiobooks when I run, because I sometimes will just. I'm not someone who reads continuously. I like stop and pause and like wave my hands
Fair.
to myself, and I will like stop and get in a shouting match with like a nearby bramble if I'm listening to a book whilst running.
I might do some audiobooks, but make it like some of the more like what do you call it? Easy to digest audiobooks.
Yeah.
So kind of stuff like Mr. Monday, which is more of like a what do you call it? Like
Teen
young
fantasy kind of
adult.
thing. Young adult, yeah.
Easy to get, young adult, not that heavy on like prose or anything. I want to listen to something heavy. I would not listen to Babel, for example,
No.
on a run.
I
That
would
would be
I would not
horrid.
listen to Brandon Sanderson.
I might. Okay, I've read basically every Brandon Sanderson book, so
Okay,
I
that's fair.
I've read all of them.
But yeah, I
Mr.
tend to
Bartender.
listen. I listen to a lot of kind of a lot of the non-fiction. When I do try and read them, I end up listening to rather than reading. But that's also
fair.
just because I'm trying to get it to force me to clean. There's a lot of books
is
to put
very
away
good
in the
cleaning.
library.
Yeah, it is very good cleaning. A very good cleaning genre is non-fiction. I wouldn't want to listen to like a fiction while cleaning because I would get too much into it.
Imagine if they had a sword fight and you're supposed to be dusting. How are you supposed to deal with that?
Yeah, like
I'd end up like
no.
fencing a potted plant or something.
Yeah, same. No, I can see that.
I'm not a fan
Oh,
of
by the way,
audiobooks because
Daniel.
it's too easy to lose focus. That's fair. I think it would be difficult to like listen to the Seven Wonders with how dense it was. That would be difficult.
That would be horrible. Even though I feel like if you get like a really good audiobook narrator, they might add
If
a lot
Stephen
in like.
Fry ever narrates a book, I listen to it.
If Stephen Fry does Seven Wonders, that would be phenomenal.
I know
I would listen to that.
I have an Audible subscription,
Yeah.
and I continuously listen to the Stephen Fry Sherlock Holmes full set just
Oh
on
yeah, I
loop.
love that one.
If I
love
don't
that.
have any credits to buy a new book to listen to, and there's none in the free category that jump out to me, I'm like, time to re-listen / read the Sherlock Holmes stories again.
I also like I haven't done it in a while, but whenever I do like a Harry Potter like read through again, where I do the whole series, because I sometimes like doing it if
It's
I'm
been
feeling
a
very nostalgic.
while since I've done that.
I always listen to the Stephen Fry ones because the Stephen Fry Harry Potter like audiobooks are so good.
Is this specifically the ones that have the background music? Because those are the ones
Yeah,
I've heard, and those are significantly better because the soundtrack to Harry
yeah,
Potter was so good.
yeah. It's those. I love them. I own all of them, and I listen to. That's the only Harry Potter like, ones I listen through now.
With the audiobooks, I feel like I let the reader colour my thoughts on what's being said. Oh, so this is actually a thing for me, which is dialogue heavy audiobooks that don't have a group of voice actors I find very difficult. But if it's something like a non-fiction book, or if it's someone like Stephen Fry who's so good at controlling his voice and narrating, then it's kind of fine for me. But you do sometimes get a bit of this is character A and this is character B, and they are both feeling
Yeah.
different emotions right now, um,
The thing with
which
it,
can make it a bit difficult.
the thing with it is, it's less in that point, Souffle. It's less about like audiobooks as a whole. It is the narrator you get, because there are some narrators that are really good at it, and then there are some that are really bad at it. I'm sorry, they're bad at it, and I would never listen to an audiobook narrated by them.
That's
Stephen Fry
fair.
is an example of really good at it, like really good at it.
Part of me,
Um,
I still, I don't. It's obviously still a way away, but I was talking a while ago on what I would do as a celebration for hitting 1,000 followers on Twitch if I ever reach it. And one of the things I
yeah.
suggested is I do not a stream per se, but like um I read aloud a full audiobook, like a short story that's in the public domain, and have it on my YouTube channel and like stream the VOD of just reading through it, and then I yap at
That
the
would be fun.
end reviewing it. Because I when someone first said it, I was like, I don't know if I should be offended, but I've decided it's a sweet thing, and people sometimes listen to my streams to fall asleep,
Hmm.
which I was like, oh, do I talk about maths that much? But yeah. I feel like dialogue would be very difficult. You've seen me attempt to be angry in Arknights, so I don't know how I'd manage.
Yeah, but there's a lot of really good audiobook um narrators. You just have to find some of the really, really good ones. I feel like you could do. You know what you should actually look at? I don't know if you've read any of them. Maybe I should suggest one, so that you read one and then you see if you like the like genre. You would do really well at cozy fantasy as a
Oh,
narrator.
I've spoken to Gentle about this quite a bit. It sounds quite pardon me, up my alley. I've read one or two before, I think.
What did you
Um,
read? I know I suggested one
uh,
for book club a while ago. I suggested Legends and Lattes,
oh, I
which
think that was
I
the one I read.
really good. Which
Um,
was really good. Something like that, I feel like you would kill as a narrator.
yeah, I did enjoy it, though I felt slightly like, how do I phrase it? I'm not always the best at wanting to continue a story because of interpersonal motivations. I like there to be a plot happening that isn't social based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bit of a difficult for me with cozy fantasy with the other two I read.
See, don't do that.
But yeah,
Cozy Fantasy doesn't do that. Cozy Fantasy does. Yeah, none of that.
I don't know. I'm too audio focused the game. I'm like, oh yeah, I realized that I did a little voice note from when I couldn't do Thursdays and Fridays streams, which I'm very sorry about. I think you can hear I still barely have my voice, so It didn't seem too practical to try to do. But and everyone was like, "Wow, Denya's so crispy," and I realized that maybe I should try and get my stream audio to run through my phone.
Yeah.
But it might be difficult since I use my phone for face tracking. So I'm not sure how having both the separate inputs at the same time would go. But I can have a look into it because I am very crispy crunchy great gamer, Mike. No crisp here, only crunch.
There's a few. I might suggest a few to you for cozy fantasy that I've read that you might like. It's not heavy on like giga plot importance, but like the secret society of your regular witches is also really pretty good.
Oh, I like secret societies. Sorry, I just saw a keyword and went, ooh.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's like I think you would like destroy it.
Okay. I mean,
Do really, really.
how do I phrase it? I think like narration and voice acting stuff is super duper cool. I just don't feel like I have the skill or the equipment to do it.
Yeah, it's
But
that is the one thing. It is a skill.
yeah. How do I phrase it? Sometimes I think that I have improved at becoming an engaging speaker over the last year of streaming, potentially, hopefully.
Yeah.
Some of that is just adapting idioms. I realize that all my sentences now sound slightly like questions, which I baffle myself over slightly. But I think that's just become a trend of people talking on the internet that I've adopted. But
Fair.
sentences be difficult. Mouse is sleepy.
Sentences do be difficult.
But
You know
yeah.
what else you could look at?
Oh.
I've got one suggestion.
Mhm.
Look at cozy lit RPG fantasy.
Oh, okay. Is that a?
So lit RPG is a very new genre. Basically, it is it kind of follows the other word for it is like progression RPGs. So there's stuff like like solo leveling that has like a level system and you level up and you get new skills and stuff.
Yeah.
It is that but in writing. So one of the biggest one is Dungeon Crawler Carl, is one of the biggest in the genre. Cozy lit RPG is cozy versions of that. So there's always progression through, but it is very cozy vibes and stuff like that. So you would look at stuff like I Ran Away from Evil, um, by Mystic Neptune, which is a cozy fantasy lit RPG, kind of like like fantasy story. It's pretty cool.
Okay, that does sound cool.
Yeah, stuff like that. Or like The Artificer's Apprentice. The whole vibe is like leveling up and progression and like fights and like a little bit of a plot, but it's like crafting vibes and you're crafting stuff and you grab a beer, for example, and stuff like that. It's very live in the world, progression forward.
Sounds sweet.
Yeah, they're very fun. I've read The Artificer's Apprentice. That's one I've read in this genre. I haven't read a lot of cozy lit RPG, but I have read that. And there's one more
Makes
on my
sense.
book. There's one more I want to read. I forget
Dania
what it
has listened to too many Valley Girl audiobook readers.
is.
If the audiobook reader is American, I simply choose to listen to a different book. I can't handle it. I'm sorry, America.
What the hell?
If they have, I can't. I. It's very strange to me just to have like the mystical forest, but it's someone talking in like a strong Southern accent. I if
can
it's
find.
if it's like a generic like American advertiser accent, just like person talking in a commercial accent, then I can handle it. But if someone has like a New York accent or some like really distinct Southern accent, my brain cannot move past it when I'm listening to certain audiobooks. If it's something non-fiction, it's fine. But if I'm trying to listen to like a light little fantasy story, and It's like, howdy, y'all. Here, I can't do a southern accent, but my brain just can't process it. It takes me like 5 minutes to hear every word.
Oh,
I want a super southern accent describing a mythical forest. That sounds so great. Yeah.
yeah, I support that idea. Shuffle, I would do that. That sounds fire.
I gotta go get a southern accent now. I'm so bad
I
with
want that.
accents, but every now and then
Oh.
I'll be watching a YouTube video of someone, and then I'll find out they're American, and I'll just be like, "But you speak in such a reasonable pace. I couldn't tell." Um, then your southern accent redeem at that a million points. I don't know what I could do other than going, "Howdy, y'all," like over and over again. What I don't even think that was correct. Reject Denya's audiobook takes become ungovernable. Yeah, I mean, fair. I don't claim to have good opinions on everything, but okay. I am starting to lose my voice again, so I'm gonna have to vanish off. Who should I raid? My brain is soup. Who's live?
I've got
Who's live?
I've got 3 suggestions for you.
Okay. Who?
So, 1, old reliable himself, Yuto is streaming.
Wait, is Yuta live? I didn't see.
Yes, he's
Where's
playing
Owl?
Kenshi. It just went live.
Hey.
He's gonna play Kenshi. Other good options is wait, ASMR. Maybe not. Uh, some Baka is live. Some is live.
Ooh, yeah.
Some is a rare raid. And then if you like ASMR and ASMR is live, Sidera is live as well.
Okay, I did actually see Sido's live, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool, cause I really like Sido's streams, but often streams before
I
me,
do
so
too.
I don't get to raid into them. But I'm a bit scared of ASMR, so I run away. Ray's live, who I'm following the logic of never normally streams at a time I can raid into, but I do love a good
Yeah,
owl or
sure.
cheese stream. Um, the owl and the cheese, the two good sources of
Owl and
friendship and
cheese stream.
streams. I'm very sleepy. I hope you've had a good book club. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to yap quite as much as usual, but my voice is still recovering, so I hope it's
Yeah,
okay. Again,
it
really
was a long
sorry this
trip.
had to be moved back a week, given my internet wasn't working last week, but hopefully it gave people time to finish the books if they hadn't managed in time, and we will be doing a full month between now and next book club, so we're going to be doing it in the second week of the month going forwards from now. I'm not going to try and make you read books in 3 weeks. So yeah, I hope you all had a great time. There's no stream scheduled for tomorrow, but I will have a stream schedule be posted. I'm not sure if I'm going to stream on Mondays. I'm going to see how healthy my voice can get. I might do a study stream. But yeah, I will see you all later. I hope you had a good time. It's exciting to be back. It's fun to be back. And I need to now go get in an argument with Kai about Brandon Sanderson. So I'll see you all later. Bye. Thank you so much for
I'm
being
stealing
here.
your librarian.
Bye. Let's go say hi to Ray.
Yeah.